The MC looks like an ordinary high school student with a backpack, but he can clear an entire dungeon by himself. This one in particular is filled with colossal orcs that seem impossible to defeat. But Dojin takes down their leader with a single blow like a true Saitama. Other orcs try to crush him, but he's too fast and powerful. He squashes them like giant cockroaches. From one orc, he loots a rare magic stone that can enhance his abilities even further. Satisfied with his find, Dojin puts it in his backpack and prepares to leave. But a group of guild members who control the dungeon finds him and isn't happy at all that he cleared it. They have the numerical advantage and are confident that as high rankers, they can defeat a high school student easily. But boy were they wrong. When they try to capture and handcuff him, Dojin shows a little of his power. Even when they attack him from all sides with electric shocks, it's all in vain. Dojin easily defeats them as if they were a bunch of kids. They don't stand a chance and still can't figure out what this kid really is. After dealing with that bunch of trash, Dojin casually walks out of the dungeon as if nothing happened. You might be wondering why this kid is so powerful. Well, he used to live in another world that was destroyed by monsters far stronger than these. Monsters infiltrated the world, causing it to succumb to despair. People fought to their last breath to protect the place they called home. Among these brave souls was the protagonist of this story, Carcilion Levandan, who fought against the threat with the same ferocity. Many years passed with him fighting countless monsters, mercilessly piling up bodies with the only sword he owned and without a shred of fear in his heart. Then the day finally came when he fought Aaron's brother from another mother. That bastard was a tough nut to crack. The battle was brutal, but he eventually defeated the worm. After the battle, he too succumbed to death, but fate had other plans. With his soul wandering through this infinite void, he encountered a human boy from a planet known as Earth. The boy's name was S.A. Dojin, who was on the verge of death for some unknown reason. Before dying, he wanted to make a simple request to Levandan, who immediately refused without even hearing what the boy had to say. After all, the bro just wanted to die in peace. He was tired of all that crap. He lost his country to monsters, lost his loved ones, and ended up dying like a dog. Although S.A. Dojin also didn't want to live, he desperately wished for his family to have a good life. Well, it seems Levandan is finally ready to hear the boy's request. The kid lights up like a child in a candy store and gathers the courage to say he wants his family to live in peace. And so our hero gladly accepts the mission to protect the boy's family and finds himself on Earth. Now, sporting the body of the teenager Dojin, our protagonist is on a mission to infiltrate the Nemison Gate, which is ranked as S-rank for obvious reasons. Only registered hunters are allowed inside. So the automatic machine keeps insisting that he scan his ID card, which he obviously doesn't have. He simply breaks into the guarded and authorized building to enter the gate, setting off the security alarm that alerts of the infiltration. Once inside, he starts walking around trying to find monsters to defeat. It's then that he comes across a group of hunters people who have official licenses and permission to be there. They assume our protagonist got lost and offer to show him the way out, especially since they're also heading towards the exit. Dojin remains silent, giving off a strange aura. Even these hunters realize something is wrong. He's wearing casual clothes and doesn't look like a hunter at all. Sure, porters these days dress more casually, but our protagonist's outfit is too simple for his own good. And what's with that backpack on his back? For all they know, he might just be a clueless porter who was abandoned by the party he originally came with. But on second thought, they're not so sure. Dojin finally speaks up, acknowledging their skepticism, but makes it clear that he came on his own without any party. Heroes. Hearing this, one of the heroes sighs, understanding the reason for our boy's presence. He's seen many cases of people getting way too excited to become heroes and hunt monsters after watching flashy commercials on TV. But that burst of motivation can get someone killed real quick if they recklessly rush into gates without following the proper procedures. First, you need to be officially certified as a hero. Then you go through training and tests. Not to mention, this gate is C rank for a reason. If you're a rookie just starting your career, you're better off looking for an F rank gate before you actually lose your life. After listening to the guy ramble on and on with his advice, Dojin makes it crystal clear that he doesn't need any of it. Naturally, the group of heroes is taken aback by the kid's cold response. After all, they were just trying to help, so they get a little annoyed. But the leader tells his companions to calm down. If the guy doesn't want help, that's fine, just leave him be. The leader is confident that the kid will learn the hard way because you shouldn't turn a deaf ear when someone knows what they're talking about. They expect him to find out just how unforgiving these gates are. Unlike the TV shows that glamorize being a hero as if it's the second coming of Christ soon enough, Dojin finally comes face to face with a giant troll staring him down, ready to eat him alive. The monster unleashes an attack, but it misses and crashes to the ground. The guy moved so fast the troll couldn't even process what had happened. Then he clenches his fist and delivers a devastating punch with enough force to tear the orc's face off. It's basically something straight out of an action movie or a man on a killing spree. Now that the monster is out of the picture, comes the interesting part. Time to loot my friend. First he takes the sword the bastard was carrying, then uses the same sword to pierce deeper into the monster's body and extracts a glowing gem. In truth, it's a low-grade magic stone so insignificant that Dojin never bothered with them in his previous life. But since he's broke now, he has no choice. Suddenly, more monsters swarm the area, furious at seeing their friend decapitated. Dojin turns and throws the gem so fast it blows one of their heads off. The other two idiots charge forward as if they have some kind of death wish they want to fulfill. Well, Dojin is more than willing to grant it. While he wreaks havoc, we cut back to the group of heroes trudging through this monster-infested territory. At the moment, their minds are still stuck on the encounter they had with that young man. The orange-haired woman is really worried about Dojin's well-being, fearing he might end up dead, but the group's leader assures them that that's highly unlikely. If he's some unauthorized intruder, agents from the control center will find him soon. These agents on missions are always B rank or higher, and since this gate is C rank, there's no way he could die in here. As long as the kid avoids recklessly throwing himself at the monsters, he's in no danger of losing his life. The bald guy agrees with his leader's assessment. He's pretty sure that the arrogant brat must be trembling in fear, waiting for the agents to save him from death. Well, the story is pretty much the opposite. It's our guy who's literally making these brutes tremble in fear. One punch and the prey goes down. He's so fast they can't even touch him, let alone crush him under the weight of their blades. He appears right behind one of the idiots and delivers a kick so powerful it crushes the guy's head. With all the suckers on the ground, he picks up one of their swords and starts collecting the precious magic stones for himself. After a while, he finishes filling his backpack and is ready to leave. Though honestly, he's pretty disappointed with today's grind. It's basically dead weight in his bag. All those low-grade gems. Just then, one of the agents finally spots him and calls out to his companions. Before our hero can fully turn around, the men in suits are staring him down. First, they explain they're from the gate's control center and suggest he show them his hero registration card. If he's not registered, he'll have to go to the control center with them. Our hero isn't so sure about that, which makes the agent suspicious. In the suit to become even more tense and cold, insisting that he cooperate and follow the correct procedures. The only reaction the men in suits get is the irritation plastered on our friend's face. And all this unnecessary drama just ruins his good mood, but on second thought, the guy doesn't have the energy to argue. He simply turns to leave. Since words aren't working, the men in suits threaten to handcuff him if he refuses to cooperate. Physical force may be used if necessary. One of the more impatient ones dares to grab our friend's hand and threatens him with the injuries he'll suffer if he refuses to cooperate. Worse yet, all the responsibility will fall on his shoulders. Therefore, it's in everyone's best interest to sort things out with words, not with violence. It seems Dojin has had enough of all the talk, so he grabs the bastard's hand back and warns him to stop causing trouble. This chilling warning makes the poor guy instinctively afraid. A shiver runs down his spine. The other two bastards draw their magic batons. Actually, they're level 4 magic staves, powerful enough to subdue an orc, but not nearly enough to physically harm our hero. And so he aggressively twists the bastard's hand, making him whimper like the spoiled little brat he is. Then, he gives one last warning. You'd better leave now if you don't want to lose the last shred of dignity you have left. Eventually, the men in suits, fulfilling their duty, are forced to retaliate with violence. They try their best to hit our hero with the magic staves, but none of them can. Our hero lands a crushing blow on the back of one of the bastards and then hits another one in the stomach. Afterwards, he focuses on the guy with glasses, the last one standing. The last one senses what's coming and tenses up. Dojin disappears in a blur, vanishing into thin air, causing the bastard to panic at the sight of a man literally disappearing. Then out of nowhere, a swift punch lands right in his stomach, making the bastard stagger backward in pain. It seems Dojin is tired of all the commotion and the agents chasing him, so he finally starts to consider registering as a hero. The agent assures him that as long as he avoids suspicious or illegal activities, no agents will be after him. Dojin then questions this thing called a rift, a question that catches the agent completely by surprise. A little background on how this world works. There are various passages that connect to another world, where strange monsters live. These passages are scattered all over the world. The gems harvested from the monsters' corpses are used as new sources of energy, making them highly coveted. Because of this, the government supervises these passages to maintain complete control over each and every one of them. Every passage controlled by the government and open to heroes is called a gate. Passages that are not controlled or have been sealed off are known as rifts. Getting back to our hero, he finds it extremely irritating that these agents follow him everywhere, accusing him of trespassing no matter which gate he enters. The poor agent explains that if an unregistered hero enters a gate without permission, the control center is automatically notified and the agents who are waiting nearby are dispatched immediately. Since our hero is considering entering a rift, the agent makes it clear that accessing them is not as easy as accessing any gate. Trespassing in a rift results in severe punishment, no warnings, no deals. Dojin is not interested in hearing any of it, so he grabs the poor guy by the face and throws him aside like a bag of trash. At this point, the poor agent regrets not calling headquarters. This crap is way above his pay grade. Before leaving, Dojin takes one last look at the pathetic agent lying there, thinking about how weak this guy is. The weakling seems to have a fractured arm and is busy shouting threats, vowing to catch our hero and put him behind bars. The scene shifts to Seoul Gazan Digital Complex in the Gwomun district. This giant building is now known as the Hero Complex. Here, all negotiations related to magic stones or anything else found in the gates take place, and nowadays this place is busier than ever. Dojin can be seen heading toward one of the shops that buys and sells magic stones. As he enters, he's greeted by this Gen Z idiot, busy scrolling through his Instagram feed watching brain-rotting videos. When Dojin says he wants to sell some magic stones, the cunning shop owner immediately starts talking up his business, claiming this branch offers the best prices to customers. He even goes as far as to say that they're the best in the entire country. Dojin finally places all the low-quality gems stained with monster blood on the counter, making the shop owner make a sour face as if he'd just been beaten up. He's genuinely disgusted by all the blood stuck to the stones. Even so, he doesn't complain and proceeds with the transaction. Dojin is asked if he wants some coffee while the stones are being processed. A short time later, he's sipping coffee while the shop owner carefully cleans the blood off the stones. Then the owner calculates the total payout: 12 low-grade magic stones, 16 mid-grade plus 5 high-grade and low-grade stones. After deducting a 40% commission, Dojin will receive about 5.5 million won. While our boy is not at all happy about paying a 40% commission, it seems unfair since he did all the hunting and spent his time. So, how the hell does this scumbag think he's entitled to almost half the money? The shop owner proudly claims he's being generous by charging only 40%. Especially since all his competitors in this business charge 45% or more. He's so confident that he even offers Dojin the option to take his stones back if he doesn't like the price. After all, no one else will offer more, or at least that's what this crook claims. Our boy doesn't fall for this trap and starts putting his precious stones back in his bag. Seeing that his tricks aren't working, the scumbag grabs Dojin's hand before he can leave and demands compensation for the appraisal and the coffee he drank. That's 30,000 for the appraisal plus 10,000 for the coffee. Not to mention all the blood he had to clean ruined his towel, man. Adding it all up, Dojin supposedly owes the guy about 350,000 won. Wait, you've watched this far and you're still not subscribed to the channel? What gives, man? You're totally slacking. Come on, my dude, go ahead and subscribe. It'll make me super happy, you know. Is Dojin going to give in to these absurd demands? It doesn't matter how much this lunatic insists. Seeing that nothing is working, the bastard resorts to street tactics and threatens Dojin with the C-class heroes he has as bodyguards. At that moment, the big guys barge into the shop through the back door asking why they were called. If someone's causing trouble, they're ready to handle the situation. Dojin in response shoots a death glare at the scumbag, who returns the look with the same intensity. Some time passes and the scene cuts to the terrified, sweaty face of the shop owner, who was acting all high and mighty like he was the protagonist. But he got a reality check when Dojin defeated his 3 pigs without breaking a sweat, making it clear who the real MC is. My man then approaches the counter and negotiates the commission down to 1%, no questions asked. We know there's no point in arguing when someone like Dojin looks directly into your soul like that. The deal is closed and Dojin leaves with a stack of cold hard cash, the fruit of his hard labor, or rather the effort dealt by his own hands. His grandmother and sister are stunned by the huge amount. The grandmother even suspects Dojin is using counterfeit bills, but he quickly clears up the situation by saying the money came from a loan to a friend who started a successful business. The grandmother isn't sure if her grandson even has a friend like that. He tries to convince her with another lie, saying it was a childhood friend. Eventually, the grandmother stops asking questions, at least the most important ones. Meanwhile, Dojin's sister is super proud of her brother for making the family rich. The caring brother pats her head. He gives her hope about the life of luxury they'll have from now on. The little girl jumps for joy at being rich. Watching her so happy, Dojin realizes that he is in fact fulfilling a promise he made. He remembers the words of the body's original owner, whose last wish was for his grandmother and his half-sister Yunong to live safe and happy lives. The poor man faded away before Dojin could say anything, and when he woke up, he had become this Dojin. Now, his only mission is to ensure this small family lives in safety and comfort. He wants to buy the safest house in Korea, which currently costs 110 billion won. For him, making money won't be a problem as long as he recovers his original strength. This world shares many similarities with the one he came from, the world that was destroyed. The only major difference is that the rifts, the gates, and the monsters here are all marginally weaker than in the world that he saw crumble. For him, who held the title of Sword God in his previous life, this place is nothing more than an amusement park. Until now, he was only fighting with 1/10 of his original strength. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door and the visitor says they want to see Dojin. The guy gets up and decides to answer it. Upon opening the door, he finds 2 thugs outside. These guys are there to collect a debt Dojin owes the absurd amount of 48 million won. Seeing this, Dojin is sure they're loan sharks. The real Dojin borrowed money from them before departing this world for good. Although it was originally supposed to be only 5 million won to pay for his grandmother's hospital bills. These guys are charging exorbitant interest to demand 10 times the original amount in a short time. They know he's been making money from Gates lately, so they want him to pay up soon, since everything is documented in the contract. But the only payment these bastards get is a devastating punch right in the big guy's face. With a single punch, the poor thug goes flying, leaving his partner gaping in disbelief. Our protagonist then shoots a death glare at the skinny guy, reminding him that over 9 million won has already been paid. So doing the math, these guys should be paying him interest. With another punch that makes the bastard cry like a baby, Dojin tells him to let his boss know that Dojin is coming for a visit. The scene then cuts to the mall bustling with people. There, we see the sweet Yunong charming a child in a teddy bear shop. Dojin brought her out shopping. Today she can buy whatever she wants. You know, our boy wasn't always this soft-hearted in his previous life. It was the original Dojin's memories that revitalized his barren emotions. His heart warms seeing how kindly Dojin treats Yunong even though she's just his half-sister. So, he wants to continue doing the same and make sure he gives all the love he can to this little girl. The little girl finally chooses the stuffed animal she really wants. It's a small but cute little bunny. She chooses it modestly, making sure not to be extravagant. But Dojin picks out a bigger stuffed animal for her. He doesn't want her to hold back. It's her day and she can pick whatever her heart desires without worrying about money. The two also treat themselves to a nice meal, savoring their food. An unknown voice calls out our boy's name. It's a middle-aged woman followed by a group of bodyguards. This mature, chubby woman seems to be another gossip who loves to criticize our boy. First, she points out his terrible sense of fashion, then questions the girl sitting next to him. She's bold enough to take a jab saying he must have knocked someone up and had this girl, just like his own mother brought him into the world. Of course, these sharp jabs deeply infuriate our boy. Meanwhile, the little girl has no idea who this woman is or why she's spouting so much nonsense so casually. The woman then promptly turns her attention to the little girl and asks for her name. The girl introduces herself as Lee Unong, which makes this twisted woman realize that she is Dojin's sister. The woman also makes a snide remark about her clothes, calling them shabby. This shrew isn't even sparing his deceased mother. And all of this is seriously pissing our boy off, but for some reason he's holding himself back, not trying to react aggressively to her provocations. Even this woman is quite surprised by Dojin's composure as he isn't falling for her bait. So, the woman decides to take it a step further. This fat, shameless woman has the audacity to ask a child the meaning of the word prostitute. Well, that's the last straw. Dojin snaps and calls her an ugly woman, saying she belongs to a tribe of orcs. Of course, the woman is left gaping and speechless, completely caught off guard. Let's find this woman, to a certain extent. Dojin was born out of wedlock and lived in poverty. At 7 years old, his mother died and he barely managed to make it to his father's house. With his father's marriage to another woman, he was rejected by everyone. The situation got even worse when his father's legitimate wife gave birth to a son and Dojin was completely ignored. Things got so bad that he was kicked out of the very house he lived in. Then he went to live with his half-brother at his grandmother's house. Reflecting on the past, our boy feels sorry for the original Dojin who had to endure all of this and still tried to keep a smile on his face, as if he had no pain in his life. But now he wants to change everything. It seems this woman is his stepsister, which explains why he was holding back. But he's not going to tolerate her anymore. He remembers sharing a roof with that orc woman and she's just as repulsive as ever. Not only is her personality messed up and her appearance orc-like, but she's also dumb as a rock. He further shatters her spirit, throwing brutal jabs about how she's a walking disaster with an inferiority complex. That's the only reason she projects her insecurities onto others, calling them ugly. She's just a clout-chasing gold digger obsessed with others, and that's the real truth the world should know. While he continues to humiliate her with his sharp blows, the entire mall is watching them as if they were the center of attention. The orc woman is completely enraged and about to lose her mind. But then Dojin's stepmother walks in. Upon seeing her mother, the orc woman approaches her like the spoiled brat she is, complaining about how this boy shut her down with words. But this mother gets annoyed seeing her daughter whining like that and silences her with a cold glare. I'm not gonna lie, the guy has one hell of a stepmother. At first I even thought the orc woman was his stepmother. The hottie turns her attention to our boy and greets him with the utmost grace. She's inviting him to come home and have some fun. But Dojin knows very well that this facade his stepmother is putting up is fake. After all, she was the one who caused the most suffering and turmoil in the 12 years he lived with them. The woman keeps reminding Dojin of things that he never wants to remember, triggering his PTSD and making him go completely serious with a tone colder than your mom's jokes. Our protagonist tells this witch to get lost. That's a slap in the face for her being cursed out by someone younger. She simply turns around and leaves with what little dignity she has left. Seriously, she didn't expect such a harsh response. She's left wondering if he's the same guy who would lower his head even after being slapped for no reason. Her daughter, that bitch, follows along with the bodyguards, also escorting the two women. Honestly, those bodyguards played the perfect role of mannequins in this situation. Let's turn our attention back to our boy. It seems that these two girls completely ruined the moment our duo was having, so our protagonist decides to leave as well. The way he reacted to his stepfamily was intentional. He wanted to make one thing crystal clear. The Dojin they knew who couldn't even defend himself is gone. It's long past time for his despicable family to realize that. The scene cuts to a Mercedes speeding down the highway. Inside the car, we see the mother and daughter. The daughter is furious with her mother for just leaving without doing anything instead of putting Dojin in his place. As she vents her frustration and curses the boy for the humiliation they suffered, the mother orders her manager to explain why Dojin is still alive. Although Baldy has no idea how the guy is alive, the story doesn't match the reports. The woman screams her head off about the lies the man is telling. How the hell can he be alive if they made sure the job was done and dusted correctly? The poor guy assures her he will investigate the matter again and ensure that this time the job is executed properly. Meanwhile, the despicable daughter has no idea what her mother's devious schemes have been all along. She gets disturbed hearing talk about killing and dying. Eventually, the mother asks her daughter a question, wanting to know if she has feelings for Dojin. This catches the fat pig by surprise, making her blush and get all flustered. In reality, she's worried about him dying. Dojin, because if grandpa or dad find out, they'll be in serious trouble. The mother grabs her daughter by the mouth forcefully and tells her to stay far away from her business. The mother is determined to take Dojin's life with no intention of sparing him, especially after how he dared to talk back to her. Getting rid of him is the best revenge she can imagine. A decade ago, the world plunged into chaos with the appearance of the Rift. This terrifying dimension gave rise to monsters emerging from the portal armed with the goal of slaughtering humans on sight. Their terror didn't stop, it was relentless and eventually devastated the world, leaving it scarred with destroyed and burning cities. However, just as the forces of darkness arose, the light also emerged in the form of valiant warriors called heroes. With their emergence, the first discovery of mana stones was made from the bodies of defeated monsters. Returning to the present day, he is heading somewhere, reflecting on how mana stones quickly changed the world's dependence on traditional energy sources. Due to their fundamental role, countries decided to focus their attention on the emerging rifts, basically claiming priority over them to extract resources. With the world in constant motion, its entire industrialization completely depends on the concept of portals and the reliance on heroes. And because of this, the hero profession offers high rewards. A high and steady salary can only be achieved by becoming a true hero. Dojin has arrived at his destination, which is the Yongdejongpo Capital HCS establishment. I know it's a long name, but you'll soon understand why he came here. He enters the building and at first glance, the boss and his clowns just look like common thugs who want to scare people with their ugly mugs. But Dojin is pretty calm about the situation. The boss puts out his cigarette and comments on the audacity of our boy, not only for beating up his goons, but also for showing up at their doorstep. This shows that Dojin really doesn't give a damn about anyone. He cunningly tells the organization's owner that he's actually the one who feels at a loss. This claim is ridiculous from the boss's point of view, so he seeks clarification on what our boy means. Dojin explains that he actually came to receive his well-deserved compensation. After all, he suffered mental, physical, and material losses all this time because of these clowns' existence. With his firm and serious words, the boss notices a significant change in the kid's personality. Something about him has changed. He's no longer the soft-spoken spirit or the gentle person he used to be. Furthermore, the evidence that this very kid destroyed the goons he sent to his door. Taking everything into account, the boss's main suspicion is that Dojin must have experienced a unique type of awakening during his experiences in the portal. Despite knowing this, the guy still decides to act arrogant and tells Dojin that his newfound confidence from the awakening will be his own downfall. The hypocrite accuses our boy of being overconfident in his abilities, and to back up his claims, he brings in a bunch of grumpy-looking men to intimidate him. Sure, he might have all the brute force he needs, but to the sword god's experience, they are practically insects in comparison. The boss is talking trash and claims that even these awakened people end up getting killed like dead weight and low-class heroes in the end. The funniest part is, the guy is under the assumption that Dojin is nothing more than a D-class hero and that his organization can easily crush someone as weak as him. Meanwhile, Dojin is just chilling on the couch in the background as 5 guys stare him down, not showing the slightest bit of amusement. He orders the boss to sit down. The boss is surprised to hear him continue speaking in the same tone, as Dojin emphasizes with a serious expression that he's not done talking yet. Upon hearing him say something like that, one of the guys decides to try his luck and challenges Dojin. Curiously, our hero cheerfully takes off his glasses, adding to the confusion, and then he lands the Mike Tyson Ballistic Universal Machine Gun Rocket Punch 9000 to the guy's face. The dude is sent flying from the impact while his friends are left speechless. But that's not all, because the beatdown is shared among the group, with Dojin taking down another one. Remember that while he's beating up the others, he also calmly explains what he knows about the boss's shady dealings disguised as loan sharking. Dojin moves to take down an orange-haired punk and shows off his knowledge of the document forgery scheme. After landing the punch, he tells the boss that he's looking for a hero identity to officially register and make money. Dodging the last guy's blow, Dojin returns it with triple the love. And that's how he puts the whole group to sleep with his special bedtime routine. It works 100% of the time. Dojin continues his demands, stating that he needs a foolproof identity that won't cause him any trouble down the line. The boss is stunned by what just happened in a matter of seconds. Our boy reminds him that he only has 1 day to forge the identity. By the way, some of the men didn't intervene in the fight, which is a compliment to the NPCs, because they're the type of character that would challenge a god as a level 1 newbie in most stories. The boss is completely lost in thought as he begins to question and assess Dojin's skill level. At the very least, this guy seems to be B-class in strength. The man is so lost in his thoughts that he needs to be snapped back to reality by the kid. He happily accepts the job. Finally, Dojin grabs his shoulder politely and puts on an intimidating expression. He wants to know if Hong Ryu, his stepmother, ordered a hit on him, of course. That's pretty much what happened, as evidenced by the conversation she had with her daughter and assistant earlier. The boss is left speechless, until Dojin squeezes his shoulder so hard the guy screams in pain. Even his employees seem helpless to help their boss. I gotta say, they should really get a new barber too. Anyway, the boss breaks down and reveals her heinous strategy. That cruel and cunning woman wanted to drain all the wealth from Dojin's bank account, driving him into such financial instability that he would have no other way out but to take his own life. Now that's an evil plan, especially against her own son, even if he is an outcast. Those were her orders. Dojin listens to it all, and after a lot of begging and crying, he lets the man go, questioning if this was also one of the reasons for having him locked in the gate. The boss turns into an innocent bystander who had nothing to do with the incident, even revealing that he wouldn't get paid for the job if he died in there. That's probably a plausible reason why he wouldn't have done something like that. And this leaves Dojin intrigued. He utters the name Kang Shuluwu, which is precisely the name of the man who led him to the gate. Basically, Dojin wants to know every single detail about the guy by tomorrow. With his 2 demands made, he politely takes his leave, changing the entire atmosphere of the room he walked into. After this conversation, Dojin returns to a state of deep contemplation. The real Seojin had only one wish: to protect his little sister and his beloved grandmother at all costs. On top of everything that happened, this just adds another layer of suffering and shows the kind of life the poor boy had to endure helplessly. But don't worry, because the sword god is ready to do whatever it takes to set the record straight. The next day, guess what? Our boy is officially registered and also received a B rank, which is convenient. Unlike all the other stories where the protagonist has to be the lowest possible rank just to earn style points when tapping their card on the machine, he confirms the card's legitimacy as the system recognizes his identity. However, the system warns him that his rank is still lower than the dangerous mission he is about to accept. This is really annoying for our hero, who thinks that maybe he should have pissed off the bastard more to get a higher rank assigned, thus avoiding these problems. Despite the system's repetitive warnings not to enter the gate far above his level, Dojin doesn't care and pushes forward. Let's talk about the details of the Night Island gate. In fact, it's just a B rank gate, but that doesn't mean a B rank hunter can survive it. To ensure the mission's safety, it's always recommended for heroes to be 1 class higher than the gate's rank. Anyway, the scale of the dungeon is considered D rank, which means it's extensive and will be difficult for a solo hunt. The good thing, however, is that it's shaped like tunnels, which means that in a way, the solo hunt won't be as hard for him this time. Due to the scale of the gate, it's highly recommended that an A rank hero take on the task. but the words risk and danger don't exist in our boy's dictionary. If something happens, the worst that could happen is he'll have to face an entire fleet of monsters in a narrow tunnel with little to no space. Dojin smiles at his first opponent, a giant serpent with a chaotic purple aura. For most heroes, this would be a sign of terror, but for him, it's a sign of good luck as he readies his gauntlets to start the battle. Oh, and by the way, the serpent also has several friends, and their tongues remind me of the movie Alien. Anyway, they do their best to attack, but it's useless because our boy is such an efficient killing machine that he grabs and collects the mana stones as if the monsters never even existed. The Black Killer Viper is a class of monster known for its paralyzing and hyperactive venom that can take down anyone with the slightest contact. With that in mind, Dojin propels himself at the speed of a bullet and delivers a full-force blow. In no time, he's about to slice and dice the creature all over its body, splattering blood until he splits it in half. With the creature defeated, Dojin notices his equipment. The gloves he bought are ensuring the venom doesn't come into contact with him, and for the price of 300,000 on are they getting the job done. Returning to the hunt, Dojin turns his attention to 4 more of these ugly limbless lizards and begins to pierce through their heads with his powerful speed. More and more blood gushes out until the vipers are sent to the great beyond. Dojin stands still, busy looking for magic stones, ripping them from the monster's flesh with his claws. To his disappointment, there are no magic stones around, but this is in line with the rules of the previous or original world. And in it, these monsters have only a 3% chance of dropping mana stones, and that means he needs to hunt at least hundreds of them to get a good haul. Walking around, he encounters Mr. Hardhead. You might be thinking it's the boss. But Dojin has a different opinion, and he asks the giant serpent if it's the boss, because surely the snake will answer like a good friend. Anyway, Dojin thinks it's a good thing this big guy showed up because he won't have to worry about getting lost anymore, and launching into an immediate attack, he plans to end the battle quickly to go back home. But then something unexpected happens. Despite landing a raw blow, his punch has no effect on the creature whatsoever. Instead, Dojin simply gave it a tattoo on its head. While he's in the air and unable to dodge, the creature slams him against the wall with its tail. Dojin just sits there after the fall. This probably made him realize the boss's strength, I think. The creature bares its venomous fangs and snarls at him like a hangry girlfriend. The creature tries to bite him, but luckily he escapes. Taking advantage of the momentum from his evasive maneuver, he follows up with a powerful punch that hits the creature's body, opening more cracks in its hard carapace. With this second attack, one thing became clear to him. The boss monster possesses an exceptionally tough carapace, making it a greater challenge than the other vipers he defeated. The carapace is so powerful at his current level that he can't penetrate it with a single blow, and this turns the tables, making him question if he should adopt a different battle strategy at his original strength. The sword god would annihilate this beast. But then, suddenly he notices something. It's the sword of the warrior who lost his life fighting the boss. And now you're all going to find out why he's called the sword god and not the fist god. Even with the weapon being extremely worn down after the fight, he is confident, believing that a sword is only as competent as its wielder. With this knowledge in mind and the blade in hand, he walks toward the monstrous serpent. The creature lunges to attack him again, reaching incredible speeds. Dojin responds by flying high into the air, proudly declaring that the creature should feel honored to. He's trying his hardest to kill the beast with a sword. Despite the sword being in terrible shape, this guy literally unleashes so many slashes quickly in just a few strikes, leaving the snake's body eviscerated. The serious fight turns into a comical conclusion with the snake dying in the background while the sword of our hero is reduced to dust. It's a good thing he eliminated the creature while it was still holding on. With the boss dead, Dojin has a brilliant idea that I don't see many other protagonists implement. He rips out one of the creature's fangs, believing it could be used as a good material for a short sword with a little refinement. Considering it a reward for his journey, he exits through the gate. When he gets out, it's already a starry night outside. He spent more time in the B-rank gate than he expected, and with the way things turned out in the end, this only motivated him to seek and fully recover his strength. Besides, he's a little happy his old friends didn't have to see this weakened version of him, as it would be embarrassing. Back from the hunt, he goes to get his magic stones appraised and sold. In front of him, there's another hero who came to turn in his large haul of magic stones. The petty receptionist treats him poorly and points out that the commission is 40%. Even the naive guy realizes the scam behind that exorbitant fee. He even goes as far as to question her, expressing his concerns and calling himself a normal person. The receptionist, just as she did with Dojin, clarifies that their fee is, in fact, the lowest among all appraisal services. The gate's commission is 5%, but that's without taxes. From the unscrupulous appraiser's point of view, it's a great deal for heroes who make good money. The money is handed over to the hero, who doesn't complain much except to ask with concern about the guy's disfigured face. The funny thing is that the guy keeps repeating the same spiel even after having his face smashed in. The fellow plays it off, saying that a psycho first annihilated his guards and then left him like this. The hero thinks it's the receptionist's fault for keeping low-rank guards at the C rank. After all, rank isn't the only thing that matters in their world. Skill also plays a fundamental role. Rank is, in fact, a misrepresentation of someone's abilities and is only updated to keep the system intact. The hero is wise to mention that people of the same rank have a wide variation in skills and abilities, so they can't be treated the same. There's also a difference between an incompetent guard who sits around all day guarding the shop and a hero who hunts beasts to survive. Even though this guy is giving helpful advice, the receptionist, who looks like a clown, just wants him to stop rambling and leave. What does he do? He offers to help the guy if he ever needs anything. As he leaves, our hero walks right past the receptionist with the same cold expression as always. Upon seeing him, the receptionist gets startled and then furious. He points at Dojin, shouting that he's the psycho who beat him up. Turning to face them, the hero is taken aback. He notes the young man's slender physique for his height. Still, the fact that he beat up the guards makes the man prepare for a fight, questioning if he's the troublemaker. One thing I like about this guy is that he doesn't get offended over trivial matters. He genuinely believes that Dojin is abusing his powers as a hero, bullying civilians in his daily life. Of course, this is far from the truth as he only knows one side of the story, but still it's interesting to see realistic characters. The receptionist is enjoying the show, knowing that guy is actually a 7-year veteran hero. If something happens to him there, the young man has several connections he can use to his advantage. Calling out Dojin's name without caring who he is, our boy turns around and simply tells the old guy to get lost. And this only makes the situation worse because suddenly he looks like a real jerk. Dojin asks if the guy is looking to get revenge. Upon hearing these words, the veteran hero feels provoked. However, being the responsible hero that he is and with the experience he has, he knows that it's reckless to fight other heroes as it almost always results in death. In fact, the mortality rate is even higher than in fights against monsters. Remembering this, the guy literally relaxes and turns his back, leaving the receptionist speechless. Dojin turns to the appraiser, suspicious, and asks if he has a problem he'd like to solve. Before the guy could answer, he throws down a bag full of magic stones to be appraised and converted into cash. These shiny gems are all high-quality magic stones, which really raises the question of who this guy really is. From the receptionist's point of view, calculating the value, it comes to a total of 150 million won. It seems like a lot at first glance, but for Dojin, it's very little for a day's hunt. He asks for the money, but the receptionist reminds him of the commission fee they need to calculate beforehand, which obviously startles our boy. Remembering that the fee is only 1% in their agreement, he calms down and tells the guy to hand over the rest of the amount. Now, in the hilarious appraiser's mind, he wants to beat the crap out of the guy for such audacity, but that only happens in his imagination. Speaking of which, the receptionist explains that management approval is needed for such a large amount and without wasting any time. Dojin demands the approval immediately, so the guy quickly calls his boss, whispering the details of the situation, but before he can close the deal, Dojin snatches the phone from his hand and bluntly tells the boss to speed up the payment. The boss agrees but just wants the phone back for his employee. Happily handing it back, Dojin accidentally, or rather intentionally, smashes the phone against the wall. The employee trembles seeing the destroyed device, while Dojin instructs him to get the money ready quickly now that everything is settled. And just like that, the receptionist prepared several bags full of cash for the transaction. In the end, the guy is devastated for being forced into it. Maybe you guys feel sorry for him. But remember, he continues to run scams that earn him almost half of what regular heroes make after risking their lives. He's a scumbag. 10 minutes passed, and the boss quickly found himself at his shop. Furious because his employee wasn't answering the phone, the hilarious part is that the receptionist throws in the towel and quits on the spot. The boss then sees the guy's broken phone on the wall, which gives him a good idea of what happened. Seeing this, he grabs his own phone to call GU, asking her to come immediately. Juan seems to be a famous young woman with beautiful purplish-pink hair. She's so well known in public that people call her Rungu Yan and treat her like a celebrity. Not to mention, she's incredibly stylish in that outfit. She arrives at the shop and impresses the receptionist with her presence, greeting him cordially with a smile. There's a big reason for all the fuss around her. She is the 4th-ranked hero in the country. Simply incredible. Rumor has it that she is the boss's niece, which makes him question what she's doing there. Confirming the rumors, Juan explains that she was called at her uncle's request to deal with a reckless hero. Intrigued by the situation, the elegant S-class hero sits down ready to hear what's going on. In the next scene, we see our protagonist with his absolutely ripped body meditating in the sun. It's true that he spent the whole day hunting, but the rewards he got were not at all impressive. With the current situation, he's worried about the future. First and foremost, he needs to reach a level where he can clear S-rank gates by himself, and that means he needs to train to restore his original strength. That's right, folks. It's time for the training arc. Dojin's biggest challenge in this current life is that unlike in his previous world, the mana density is low. This means that even if he tries his best to accumulate mana at the current rate, it will take at least 3 years to get close to his original strengths, even more so if things get tough. On the bright side, he could look for better equipment for battle, but the problem is that even the weakest pieces of gear easily cost hundreds of millions, so it would be a waste of money. Suddenly a chill runs down his spine as he senses the presence of someone dangerous. Locking his eyes on Yoon, he grabs the little girl at high speed and demands that everyone get inside quickly. Once inside, he locks the door while his grandmother anxiously asks what's happening. The entire structure shakes from a strong tremor, causing her voice to get scared and asks in terror if they're really having an earthquake. Little Yunong is panicking, but the truth is something only our boy knows. It's not just an earthquake, it's something more. Dojin feels the sharp and violent energy outside. A rift has just opened in his world, and by chance it has manifested right above his house. Rushing to deal with the problem, he tells his loved ones to stay inside as the situation outside is dangerous. For them. At high speed, he dashes into the rift's entrance, the last thing heard being the screams of his grandmother and sister calling for him. The scene then changes to the Soul Heroes Association, where its members are immediately alerted to the sudden appearance of a rift over the Mappo region. It appeared 63 days after the last one. Realizing that the White Lion Guild is the closest to Mappo, the manager asks his staff to get in contact with the guild immediately and alert nearby heroes to help control the situation. Upon closer inspection of the rift's exact location, he discovers that it appeared on top of a residential house. This is a delicate situation even for them, because if a civilian were to enter the rift, their death is almost certain, not to mention the rift won't allow anyone else to enter after that, and if the person inside dies, a wave of devastating monsters will emerge in 10 days, causing chaos and destruction for the area's residents. The monster wave would become so uncontrollable that the safety of Seoul would be completely compromised. The manager is curious about the person who interacted with the rift and entered it. It turns out they know that CO Dojin was the one, as he is the resident of that house. According to his grandmother, he entered the rift to protect his family. Based on this information, they conclude that he isn't a hero, which complicates things because the chances of an ordinary civilian returning from a rift are practically zero. This causes the entire team to feel despair and helplessness about the situation, since there's nothing they can do. In the next scene, we see Dojin's furious stepmother upon hearing the news of his new awakening. She can't believe what's happened. Her assistant reports that although he hasn't officially registered with the Association of Heroes, they came to verify if he had truly awakened after his last experience in the gate. And this leaves her frustrated because Kang Tai-woo was supposed to have finished the job, but instead only made his target stronger. Completely losing control, she slams her fist on the table, questioning why the hell they couldn't even kill one guy. The fact that they were paid for a failed job also fuels her rage. Yelling at manager Lee, she declares her frustration with Kang Tai-woo, sending him a message. If he doesn't kill Dojin himself, he will have to pay her 10 times the amount owed. But to her surprise, her assistant reveals they might not even need to contact him anymore, sharing the news of a new rift appearing right on top of Dojin's house. Having confirmed that he entered the rift, it's clear he won't be coming out alive. Hong Riju is delighted to hear the news, and the implication that he won't survive. She calms down, looking normal for the first time, and tells her assistant to monitor the situation until they have more news. As for our boy, he has just arrived inside the rift's domain. It's a forest. In fact, it's the same forest where he used to rest in his youth. The forest of Patisoa is an exact reconstruction down to the smallest detail he remembers. Even the rich mana within carries the same weight. Following the path, he smiles as he once again finds the almighty world tree. This tree exudes mana in its purest form, the most divine structure and the core of the world's stability. So much so that when the old world fell, it all began when this tree was incinerated to the ground, forever disrupting the flow of mana. However, in this parallel dimension, the tree is intact exactly as he remembered it. Although he doesn't know the cause, one thing is certain: he has a chance to recover his lost mana by absorbing it from the tree, meditating under the excellent flow of mana. Our boy is regaining more and more of his strength. He spent over 3 days sitting exactly like that, forgetting to eat, drink, or take care of his bodily needs. 10 whole days passed, and all he could do was harmonize his breathing, as at the end of the 10th night, trouble came looking for him and interrupted his meditation. These alien creatures are called Balkna, and they've come to burn the tree, just as they did in the past. Only this time, our boy is there to prevent the tragedy from repeating itself. The creatures charge forward to attack him, while Dojin laments not having a water element sword to take them down easily. The flaming monsters roar in his direction, but our boy is so juiced up on mana that he doesn't care about weapons anymore. He is the weapon, and those hands are not safe for work reaching out towards the monsters. He exerts so much authority with just his mana that he knocks one of them down. The second creature is stunned by his skill. Let's break down what happened. What he did there is called mana release, and it's not exactly telekinesis, it's an explosive attack that uses pure mana like a concussive blast. It had been a while since he used this ability this way, considering his reserves were low all the time. Anyway, the creatures of Balkna haven't given up yet. To retaliate, they unleash charged blasts from their mouths. These pulsing laser beams quickly hit our boy, who looks calmer than ever. His mana alone is enough to shield him from any harm, charging towards the creatures. While shrouded in a mana blast, he remarks that he's finally protected the world tree and now he's ready to have some fun and enjoy the fruits of his training. The ugly bastards try another energy attack, but our boy quickly grabs two of them and forces their mouths shut. This way, their ability charges up and explodes inside their mouths, leaving behind a flaming decapitated corpse. The corpses of the creatures disintegrate, dropping 2 valuable magic stones for him to use. But this is just the beginning. Dojin is having the time of his life, excited about unlocking something called an Eternal Ember after defeating these guys, gleefully carving a path through the monsters and taking them down with a smile. He's finally happy to be looting a good amount of mana stones from them. The one-sided slaughter continues until he wipes them all out. Dojin hit the jackpot with the amount of stones they're dropping. Among them, he also discovers a small coin or seed shining gold. It's called an Eternal Ember, and he picks it up in his hand. With it, he regains control of more power by crushing the fragment and releasing its flames. The way he casually plays with the ember reminds me of Sukuna from Jujutsu Kaisen. Normally, the ideal strategy would be to keep collecting mana from the world tree. However, his body has reached its physical limit for mana. The second way to do it is to absorb the ember, completely altering the state of his mana and turning it into fire mana. And that's exactly what he does, with his body producing a wave of fiery energy. Unfortunately, in his previous life, he didn't feel any need to do this and didn't care about the Eternal Ember. Now, however, it's necessary for him to completely absorb the embers, and it takes about 10 minutes to absorb one. Luckily, he managed to collect a bunch of them, so his goal is to absorb as many as possible. The appearance of the rift has sparked public interest. Reporters are all gathered around our boy's house, while agents and association staff secure the location. Well, CONGU is furious at the arrogance of some guy who entered the rift prematurely. I should mention that he's a dead ringer for Yon Hold from solo leveling, just with a neater haircut, I guess. We also have our protagonist, but with blue hair. This guy's name is King Run Woo, and he sympathizes with Dojin's actions to save his sister. But Run doesn't buy that explanation, accusing our boy of having entered out of greed. Unprepared for the consequences, it would have been acceptable if he had died the normal way. But if he dies in the rift, the place will become a blast zone for monsters that will pour out. And that's the problem, really. RIU asked for Gilma's opinion. And apparently Gilma told them to just follow protocol. Run questions the recent emergence of rifts in several countries around the world, like the USA, China, Switzerland, Turkey, and the UK. This is one of the reasons why Gilma is having a hard time dealing with so many rifts simultaneously. This kind of phenomenon doesn't happen every day, and yet some nations manage to contain the threat with ease. But what about South Korea? They're furious because the situation could turn into a disaster, all because of a single individual. Seonggu is so pissed off that he wants to beat the crap out of the guy who went inside and is begging for the rift to spit him out. Speaking of the gigantic purple portal, it's been 28 days since its appearance. The same goes for the number of days Dojin has spent in there. Now the Hero Association is scared and has already alerted the threat as a level 1 wave. Dojin's identity hasn't been revealed to the world for privacy reasons, but for now they're calling him Ordinary Person S. While the rest of the world is unaware of Dojin's identity, the head of the Loan Shark organization quickly realizes and puts the pieces of the puzzle. Even his assistant confirms the report to verify the information about his involvement. Kei Yongu plays the right-hand man of Chairman Hwan Chanobi. Chanob is curious and wants to know the chances of Dojin surviving to get the One Piece. Yes, you heard me right, as is Kusto. On this channel, the One Piece is real. Moving on, the assistant is quite certain that an ordinary person has less than a 1% chance of survival, but the mere mention of Dojin being treated as an ordinary person draws an amused smile from Shang. This same so-called ordinary person supposedly put his men in the hospital and had them in bandages for weeks. From the world's perspective, they are grossly underestimating the abilities of the only civilian who entered the rift. Now, Chang Sob is also interested in knowing the chances of someone surviving as an Esper. To that, his assistant believes it would all depend on the hero's level, and it's hard to make a judgment without precise information. Even Shang admits that fighting ability is different from pure survivability, and that introduces a whole new level of complications when you're inside a rift of all things. Either way, one thing is for sure, the bastard hasn't changed. Shang decides to protect Dojin's family, but not for any noble reasons, no. This scumbag plans to sell his loved one's organs if he doesn't make it back, and even if he does, he'll pin the debt on him for having taken care of them. This guy is the personification of a leech. The scene transitions to the mesmerizing world tree. Here our boy is going full steam ahead on his training arc, as his body now thrives on flame mana. He doesn't even know how much time has passed, but he has been dedicated to the point of absorbing hundreds of firestones. With this, he has acquired so much fire mana that he can use and manipulate it as he pleases. Not to mention that his flame resistance has increased as a side effect. Comparing his past self to his current self, considering only the fire attributes, he believes he has surpassed his former self to a small degree by mastering this ability. Hugging the world tree, he shares a tender moment with it. It has always served him in times of need, both in the past and now. For that, Dojin is grateful for everything it has done for him. As for his mana stones, he made a small pouch using vines to keep them. With the stones collected and stored away, Dojin fully understands that he probably will never see the angelic tree again. Even so, he hopes their paths will cross again if the divine tree ever finds itself in danger. Because when that happens, he will be ready to protect it with his own life. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I really enjoyed this tender scene. That night, Dojin finally makes his way to the outside world, emerging from the rift completely. Fortunately, he doesn't sense anyone's presence nearby, suspecting that most people probably thought he had already died inside and that a monster wave would erupt at any moment. However, he detects the presence of someone strong nearby. Deciding to pursue it, he runs to find the source of the sound. Shortly after, he comes across the two agents, one annoyed and the other relaxed, both Runu and Sionu from last time. Now he understands that these guys probably represent the association just by the clothes they're wearing, which means that on the off chance he gets caught, things will get really troublesome. To combat this problem, he creates a fireball and launches it into the air with a powerful strike. The attack ends up piercing through the building, resulting in a massive explosion. Upon detonation, Ryunu and Seonggu were on high alert as soon as they heard the boom. Realizing it involved fire, they decided to pursue it. There they found a group of people paralyzed in horror. Seonggu questioned what the hell was happening amidst the chaos. Meanwhile, Hung Wado was using his fire powers. So far his accuracy was good, which would be very useful to him. Remembering his old friend Tusk, he wondered if the mage would be impressed with his current level of flames. After all, Tusk was known for being the strongest fire mage on the continent, and they shared a strong bond. Suddenly, Ryunu's keen senses alerted him to look toward the rift. It seemed to be behaving strangely right before his very eyes. It vanished into the mist. The two agents rushed to the scene to see what was happening. Upon arriving, they were in disbelief to discover that the rift's connection to their world had been severed. As for our hero, he simply moved on to his next destination without any major issues. The next morning, news breaks about the state of the rift that had remained open for 1 month in Mappo. It is announced that the rift disappeared 29 days after the entry of P-Pseudo into the zone, proving that the Heroes Association's concerns about the monster wave were wrong. They have no idea about the unexpected disappearance of the rift and are investigating the incident. They are also having difficulty dealing with the cause of the fire that started in a junkyard at the time of the rift's disappearance. Now, most people believe that Sudajon is dead and that this is just the consequence of his own actions. Unbeknownst to them, our hero is hiding in plain sight, observing the conflicting opinions of the people, while some sympathize with the young man who lost his life. Unfortunately, the rift's disappearance is devastating news for our hero. He is devastated because he can no longer interact with the World Tree. Even though he can no longer protect the World Tree, there is still one other thing he can protect in his life. This brings us back to the capital of HCS. Inside, the idiots are busy celebrating Dojon's death, believing they can get rid of the old woman and his sister easily afterward. After all, Changub is exactly the type of guy who squeezes people dry. One of them is talking about how they should let the little sister grow up so they can use her in other ways. As they're talking freely, a familiar voice greets them and demands to speak with the boss. The scene cuts right there and we see Shangsub humming and going about his day, satisfied that Dojon is finally out of the way and dead for good. His assistant reviews the day's appointments. Apparently he's free for most of the day except for a lunch with another CEO. Hearing this, he's happy because tonight he can go have fun at a nightclub run by Madame Kang. It's basically meaningless chatter. Until he enters the building and as he climbs the stairs finds his men being thrown around like toys. Their blood is splattered everywhere. And the cause of it all is someone he presumed to be dead. Our protagonist throws him to the ground and orders the filthy Shangsub to crawl back to him like a dog. This chilling order makes the company president shudder. Our protagonist acts like the true leader of the group and takes his place in the chair. He then repeats the order for the ignorant Shangsub, who is still processing the weight of that shameful command. Without wasting any time, he crawls like a dog. Relentless as ever, Dojon then orders him to bark as he deserves to be treated like an animal. The loud and clear command from Dojon makes Shangsub whimper in humiliation. It takes him a second to manage a bark, but our protagonist is not satisfied at all. Our protagonist personally makes sure to turn him into an animal, forcing him to bark repeatedly for all to hear. The president is reduced to something less than human, just like the people he mistreats. Dojin points out that scumbags like him only feign obedience on the surface, but end up stabbing you in the back the moment they find an opportunity. Uttering his filthy name, he coldly tells the man that his life has given him plenty of experience dealing with second-rate humans and begging for mercy. Chang Sob is prepared to serve as a loyal dog if necessary, but Dojin has heard enough and delivers a hard slap to his face. That force alone is enough to take the man's breath away and makes him spit blood. His assistant watches the scene until his own name is called. Dojin addresses him as the new head of the company and recommends that he stop working for a scumbag like that. Knowing these guys are always ready to stab people in the back, he orders the assistant to kill him, with full permission. Of course, that's too heavy a task for a competent servant like him. He apologizes and protests, stating that their leader has a lot of connections, so things will get really bad if he's appointed boss instead of Chang Sob. On his behalf, the assistant begs Dojin to spare the guy one more time. However, Dojin doesn't want to play with words in front of them. He suggests wrapping Chang Sob's body in a barrel and erasing all the evidence by throwing it into the endless ocean. After all, that's one of the things these guys are experts at. Seeing that the boss's servants are not willing to obey, our hero takes a different approach. Dojin threatens the whole group, saying he'll throw them all into a gate as monster food if they don't comply with the order. Yes, the mere mention of it leaves Chang Sob a wreck. He can't take it anymore and keeps begging for his life, promising that he will never betray him and will always serve Dojin. This leaves our hero somewhat pensive. Although he could kill Chang Sob right then and there and get rid of all his problems, something in him has changed in this life. He admits to himself that he has become softer compared to his ruthless past. So this time he agrees, offering his hand to the guy. I'm sure Chang Sob will become extremely religious after this, praying that he never gets on Dojin's bad side again. He shakes the hero's hand, promising to serve him unconditionally from now on. But wait, something is off because his hand is engulfed in blazing flames. Yes, even though Dojin has become softer, he's still ruthless, looking the man in the eye. He reminds the scumbag that this is truly his last chance. Dojin then obliterates the guy's hand, reducing it to a charred pulp. At the end of the meeting, he takes his leave, ignoring the president's agonizing screams. He leaves them with one last warning. If any of them ever try to meddle in his family's life again, Dojin will personally ensure their deaths. As for their new job, they are now responsible for protecting his family for the rest of their lives. That's how you deal with traitors. Officially, the man known as Dojin was just a blip in their existence, disappearing along with the gate. In reality, he's having dinner at a local restaurant, the government, the Hunter Association, and all kinds of media outlets quickly wrote him off as old news. Everyone treated the civilian who entered the gate as a dead man. Even if he reappeared and told the world that he was alive, nobody would believe him. Besides, re-emerging after a solo mission inside a gate would only bring him headaches and trouble. As for that tame dog, Chang Sob, he's helping find a new and suitable house so they can move in peace. For now, Dojin finally had the chance to treat his sister to some delicious fast food. He also told her about the plan to move to a better neighborhood, and she couldn't have been more happy. Now she'll be able to go to kindergarten like the other kids her age and start elementary school next year. When the topic of school came up, little Yunyong's mood soured. Dojin was alarmed. He's used to slaughtering abominable beasts, but coddling a child isn't part of his skill set. He was surprised when his sister confessed how other children tease her for being an orphan. Hearing about his adorable sister's suffering broke her big brother Dojin's heart. If she doesn't want to hang out with those mean kids, she doesn't have to. Those little brats will get what's coming to them eventually. Finding out she wouldn't have to go to kindergarten and be bullied anymore, Yunyong was radiant. Meanwhile, Dojin planned on sending his little sister to a prestigious private school where no one would dare look down on her. That night, Seoj discovered that King Yonggu had hidden his grandmother and sister in some random motel while he was trapped in the rift. That bastard Glash nearly broke his back trying to apologize. He argued that the motel was run by their company, so it was safer than anywhere else. Dojin didn't have the energy to deal with minions tonight, so he just went into the room and saw his grandmother once again. Little Yong jumped on him with a tight hug, and his grandmother held his hand with tears streaming from her eyes. She was just happy to see her grandson return alive. At first, the hardened warrior was stunned, but as soon as he felt the warmth of his family, he accepted the love they had for him with a smile. Little Yoon really liked McDonald's, so they've been having dinner at that totally real place often. Today, she asked questions about her big brother's job about being a hero. When asked if she liked having a hero for a brother, and Yoyoung answered nonchalantly that he didn't. Although it was cool that heroes were strong and awesome, they were also constantly in danger fighting terrible monsters. Sometimes they even died, and little Yang just wanted her brother to live with their grandmother and her for a long, long time. Dojin was so used to senseless bloodshed. Having someone worry about his well-being was a completely new feeling for him. In the cruel world of the past, he was the last human survivor. He fought against monsters and creatures beyond his imagination. In the process, he lost so much. Now that he's been given a second chance in a different world, something incredibly precious has appeared by his side. Feelings he had long forgotten are resurfacing. In this world, maybe he can live happily. Maybe he can just live a quiet life with joy and love. While he was feeling happy and warm inside, the Korean Hero Association was in an uproar. Na Taeyeon, founder of the Korean Hero Association and director of the World Hero Federation, is quite concerned about the recent rift incident, or rather the lack of one. His best experts investigated the site, but no new information was found. The feeling of uncertainty about the state of his territory is frustrating the founder. It's not absurd to believe that a rift that spontaneously disappears could reappear at any moment. His assistant tried to agree with his concerns. She thought it would have been better if a wave had occurred. At least they would not have to worry about unknown variables. Director Taiwan cuts her off before his anger rises. Although he's worried about the uncertainties, he considers it lucky that no one got hurt. Natai is one of the 100 most respected and powerful heroes in the world. There's much speculation that he would easily be elected president with the highest number of votes in history. His words and influence could easily bring down national conglomerates if he wanted. Fortunately, his interests don't lie in the power of a national leader, nor in the wealth of a conglomerate. The only thing that matters to him is the safety of his people. In other words, he's a real man. Even if it takes time, he wants a more thorough investigation covering the entire perimeter of the rift. The residents of the nearby area have already agreed to sell their properties to the association, so that shouldn't be a problem. As compensation, Taiwan wants to offer these people a value above market value for their homes. It's the least they can do after causing so much trouble. All reliable sources have reported that multiple rifts have occurred in different countries. In any case, something is happening. The United States and China have already entered the control phase for their rifts. Among the major nations, the United Kingdom is facing the biggest problem. While experienced and reliable heroes were sent to clear the other rifts, the UK's squad was simply incompetent. Speaking of them, the one-month mission to eliminate the UK rift finally crumbled into a resounding defeat. The UK rift's wave has officially begun. The city and its inhabitants go about their lives as usual. Amidst the crowd was Dojin, blending in with the pedestrians. Today his destination was his favorite shop in the hero complex. Upon entering, the clerk greeted him. Instinctively but choked when he saw his face, the guy's hair stood on end in terror at the sight of the black-haired young man. His manager was in the store today, so he wouldn't have to deal with this sadistic customer alone. The manager immediately closed the newspaper he was reading and looked up. His voice was controlled, but laced with anger. This is the guy who's been forcing the meat cashier to buy low-quality crystals. Dojin disdainfully pulled the backpack from his pocket and threw it on the floor. Actually, it was good that the manager was there. That way selling his magic crystals would be faster. The manager expected another batch of low-quality crystals to spill onto the floor. He wasn't interested in such insignificant business. Dojin didn't like being rejected when all he wanted was a fair deal. The manager or any other sensible merchant couldn't afford to accept just a 1% commission. It would be better if the young man just left. Dojin stated that refusing to deal with him would be a grave mistake the manager would regret. The manager continued to wave the young man away without even bothering to look at the backpack. This was the last warning he would give before the situation got worse. In response, Dojin kicked the backpack on the floor, spilling its contents. As experienced crystal dealers, both the cashier and the manager immediately recognized the properties of those stones. That crude backpack was in fact full of heroes' magic crystals, a legendary treasure that money couldn't buy. Dojin had a rough idea of how much this stuff was worth. He knew he was holding something top tier. You see, the hero's magic crystal was used by an infamous Mexican drug dealer, Quarzamon, in the manufacturing of New Age drugs. One night, a lab accident changed the course of his life and the world's perspective on a small stone like that one. The hero's magic crystal caused Quarzamon to awaken as a powerful hero. Since then, the crystal became an invaluable item for the awakening of heroes and for mana enhancement. Such an incredibly rare energy source can be classified as a top-quality product. As a power move, Dojin ordered the idiots to pack up his things and started to leave. The manager quickly changed his dismissive and arrogant tone to a welcoming one. He even escorted the young man to their VIP seats and offered some drinks while his cashier polished the crystals. Dojin enjoyed turning the tables in his mind. One second he was being ushered away. The next he was sipping a cold drink. His initial proposal was full price with a 0.5% commission. As soon as the manager showed hesitation, he threatened to call off the deal. In previous negotiations, Dojin had agreed to 1%, but now he was lowering that already terrible rate even further. Frankly, he was only doing it out of spite. In response, the manager bowed his head and tried to apologize as sincerely as possible. Well, Dojin was tired of hearing empty apologies. Either they accepted his rate or he would take his business elsewhere. Simple as that. At the counter, the clerk was cursing Dojin mentally for being such a rude jerk. Seeing that his act wouldn't convince the boy to give him a higher percentage, the manager focused and began a long speech about the magic crystal market and pricing. Dojin didn't have time to listen to so much nonsense. He finished his drink and stood up, causing the manager to panic, feeling the opportunity of a lifetime slipping through his fingers. The manager offered a 9% commission. It didn't work, so he proposed 8%. This continued from 8 to 7, 6, and 5. In that range, his store would make no profit at all. While the manager was in complete despair, Dojin seized the chance and agreed to accept 1% out of respect for their previous dealings. Inside, the manager wanted to scream and curse the shameless extortionist. He simply couldn't pass up on the product. The next words out of Dojin's mouth almost made the manager wet himself with excitement. Besides the one he brought today, he had about 7 more bags of those priceless crystals. With that said, the contract was quickly drawn up and signed. A few minutes after the deal was formalized, 67 billion won entered Dojin's bank account. Dojin, that's about $48 million. At this rate, his 110 billion won house doesn't seem so far-fetched. The problem is that getting more magic crystals of high quality through normal gates is too time-consuming. If he found a way to travel freely through the rift zones, he could easily hoard treasures like crazy. While looking at his phone screen, an administrative message was sent out to everyone in the country. The wave outbreak in the southern region of the United Kingdom was finally announced to the general public. Meanwhile, everyone is prohibited from traveling to the UK. After reading about a real problem in the real world, Dojin lost interest in messing with the store manager. In the past, it didn't matter which country or association was involved. He could have stepped in to seal the rift himself, but he's not that guy anymore. He has more important matters to deal with. Tonight, dinner is on Dojin and they're having meat. Man, little Eon's mouth watered at the sight of the marbled pork and beef on the grill, as expensive meat and juicy side dishes kept coming to the table. Worried about the price considering the menu's cost, the grandmother slowed down and asked her grandson if it was okay. 250,000 won for 100 grams was a pretty steep price. Dojin dispelled her worries immediately. After profiting handsomely from harvesting crystals, they could eat as much as they wanted without it putting a dent in his bank account. Yunong's first bite made her fall in love with the taste of that incredibly flavorful meat. Dojin kept adding more and more to the grill, while his grandmother watched apprehensively. Soon another package of fresh ribs, ribeye, steak sirloin, and flank steak would arrive at the table. At this point, the amount was absurd. How could 2.5 people eat all that? Well, the grandmother was underestimating the appetite of a protagonist. To calm her down, little Yunong convinced her grandmother to try the expensive delicacies. Unable to refuse her dear granddaughter's offer, the grandmother gave in. A single bite of that expensive meat was enough for all her worries to vanish into thin air. Afterward, the happy family enjoyed an extravagant dinner, filled with smiles and laughter. Unbeknownst to Dojin, a flashy young woman had just entered the restaurant. The other guests almost flinched in awe wherever she passed. The woman went straight towards SEO Dojin and decisively got his attention. She just wanted to talk with him for a moment, nothing more, nothing less. Before she could explain why Dojin cut her off for interrupting his family's dinner. If she wanted to say something to him, she should come back when the damn meal was over. Yi Ju-yeon took out her business card, hoping the young man would change his tune upon hearing from her. Much to her disappointment, Dojin continued grilling and eating meat, completely ignoring her presence. And so the renowned S-rank hunter swallowed her pride and sat patiently in the restaurant's waiting area. With a star like her sitting in the presence of ordinary people, she naturally became the center of attention. Men and women cast furtive glances at the woman who stood at the pinnacle of heroism. She wasn't just the 4th-ranked S-class hero nationally, but most people would also place her among the 10 most beautiful heroines in the world. All the civilians around were wondering the same thing. Who the hell is making Yi Ju-yeon wait? Ignoring the blatant whispers around her, Jo-yeon recalled the brief interaction she'd had minutes earlier. As far as she knew, SEO Dojin had entered his first gate 2 months ago. He had survived and was now suspected of having awakened. He was believed to have died in the recent Mappo Rift incident, but here he was, alive and having dinner with his family. Besides all the details that didn't seem to make sense, a single piercing glance from the young man put an S-class heroine like Jo-yeon on high alert. A newly awakened person couldn't reach S-class in less than 2 months, right? Even the oil tycoon Kafamon, who spent his fortune on mana stones, took about 5 months to reach the pinnacle. Rationalizing what she felt, Ju-yeon concluded that Dojin must have some kind of unknown special ability. Finally, Dojin, his grandmother, and little Unong were satisfied with full bellies and renewed spirits. On her way out, June walked up to the mysterious young man to finally talk. Before she could open her mouth, another individual entered the restaurant with an air of superiority. Dojin's eyes became sharper than usual upon seeing the man. That disgusting fellow didn't expect to see Seo Dojin alive and well. After the trip through one of the deadly gates, the lunatic Kang Chu. He was actually quite amused by Dojin's feeble resistance. Even Jun seemed to recognize the troublemaker at a glance. In the middle of the restaurant, tension mounted as silence filled the air. Dojin chose to ignore the bastard's shallow insults and called out to Jun. Chu was surprised to see an S-rank heroine talking to the cockroach. Dojin asked her to look after his family for a moment. All she had to do was call a cab so they could leave and go home. It would be more convenient if they were away while he collected an overdue debt from a mutt. Fortunately, Ryun-jun was a very sensible young woman. She did as Dojin asked and assured the grandmother and the little girl that everything would be okay. She waved them goodbye, but their worry was obvious. Jun stood there awkwardly as the taxi pulled away. As soon as they were speeding away from the restaurant, a loud, crisp slap echoed through the establishment with his loved ones out of the picture. Dojin could finally drop the nice guy act and smack someone. He moved so fast that Chu didn't even see the hit. He only felt the sharp sting on his cheek. Embarrassed by such a humiliating attack, Chu gritted his teeth and lunged to retaliate. One of the waitresses tried to break up the fight, fearing that the awakened might destroy the entire restaurant if the conflict escalated. Her reasonable plea was met with disproportionate violence. Luckily, she wasn't seriously hurt. This Dojin calmly told everyone to get out and evacuate the place for their own safety. Chu is very easy to rile up. He's a muscle-headed idiot who can't even come up with a good taunt, so he was punished with another punch to the face. He was caught completely by surprise, feeling a knuckle slam into his head. Kang Chu is the bastard who locked the original Dojin inside a gate, leaving him for dead. Even though he wasn't the direct victim, our MC still holds a deep-seated grudge against this moron and wants to have a little chat. Chu the goblin-faced goon laughed as he mentioned how Dojin's evil stepmother had orchestrated everything. Realizing that extracting information from this idiot was far easier than he imagined, Dojin pulled out his phone and hit record on the video app. He just needed a clear and concise recording of the confession, and his life would become much simpler going forward. Once again, Chu felt insulted by his nonchalance. He concentrated power into his fist, called Dojin's mother a whore, and attacked with unmatched intensity. He intended to finish the job he'd failed before. He wanted to kill his Dojin once and for all. Unfortunately for the brute, his primitive attacks were no match for Dojin's expert redirection. He absorbed the violent punch with a soft touch and sent the enemy's fist flying as if it had hit an impenetrable, elastic barrier. Kang Chu had never experienced anything like this before. Normally, he would just use brute force to kill anything in his way. Now it seemed he was facing someone far beyond his tiny brain's capacity to understand. Suddenly, he was knocked to the ground. Dojin tracked his body's trajectory like a hunter toying with his prey. The sounds of fists cracking a skull echoed through the restaurant, as the waitress from earlier scrambled to call the police. Before she could hit the call button, a delicate hand plucked the phone from her hands. With a radiant smile, Ryun-jun assured the waitress she would handle everything, so there was no need to involve the authorities. The waitress was relieved to see a reassuring face. Amid his collapse, slaps, scratches, and punches pummeled Kang Chu's body, giving him no chance to even breathe. As far as Jun knew, this vermin was a rank B hero. With that rank, not many people could beat him so easily. Based on this thrashing, Dojin could be classified as rank A. Well, even if that were true, the fight still seemed a little too one-sided. Before things got worse, Ryun-ju carefully asked Dojin to stop for a moment. She was just worried that Kang Teo might die if the beating continued any longer. Deciding to listen to her, he dropped the goblin's limp body on the ground and wiped his hands, seeing that there was clearly some vendetta between the two. Yon asked the young man how much he knew about Kang Teo. Dojin might not have known everything, but he knew enough about the bastard to get his revenge. Ryun-ju warned him that the worm Kang Teo was connected to Kang Yang-piu, an S-rank hero. Well, Dojin already knew that and didn't see any problem at all. Yon had never met someone so reckless and insane. That guy didn't care about the consequences he might face at the hands of an S-ranker, and Ryun-ju explained that Kang Yang-piu was very protective of his delinquent cousin. The incident at the restaurant would surely reach the ears of that powerful hero, and when it did, blood would be shed. Dojin scoffed at Yon's concerns. He's the last person who would be afraid of an arrogant S-ranker. More than future problems, he's annoyed that Yon knows so much about his life. Now that the goblin lackey was defeated, Dojin's animosity shifted to the meddling S-ranker face to face. The feral young man stared her down, and Yon wasn't one to be easily intimidated. She wouldn't back down from a simple, intimidating stare. Changing the subject, she apologized for the sudden visit and explained her plans. Her uncle had summoned her for a talk after discovering the pouch of Hero's magic crystals that he had sold. Ryun-ju wanted to get her hands on the rest. She was willing to buy every single piece he had, no matter the price. Dojin warned her that it wouldn't be cheap. After all, he had many precious treasures stockpiled. She assured him that the assets of an established S-rank hero were beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Well, it's not like he was opposed to selling his goods, he just has one condition before closing the deal. It's nothing much. Just a small favor at least for someone as renowned as Reunion. In another part of the city, the sound of expensive liquor bottles shattering on the floor can be heard. Dojin's evil stepmother is furious upon learning new information about her supposedly dead stepson. Her men had been so sure that the boy had died in the rift, but now she's getting news of how Dojin survived like a resilient cockroach. Press F for the bald guy here. Having a boss like her must be no fun at all. You can't blame him for the misinformation. Even the Hero Association declared Dojin dead. The evil stepmother doesn't want to hear excuses, she wants action. To make matters worse, they just received news of Kang Ti-woo's defeat at the hands of Dojin. At this point, it's safe to assume that Dojin already knows who is truly responsible for his attempted murder, upon hearing that she could be implicated. The evil stepmother swallowed hard, terrified. She isn't afraid of Dojin. Her biggest concern is the trouble it will cause when her father or husband finds out about her dealings. She can cover everything up, but if the news leaks to the media, the group's stock value will plummet. Therefore, she ordered her men to intercept the press. If they mess up the T group, and the W group will surely cancel all contracts and advertisements. First of all, the police also need to be on their payroll. In that regard, the evil stepmother's men have already mobilized to ensure everything is covered. Knowing they had a minimum of competence eased some of the pressure on her shoulders. The bald director there then whispered that no matter how many cover-up attempts they make, what they're doing isn't a fundamental solution to the real problem. At this point, the bald director might have a plan to end this headache. They just need to use Kang Ti-woo's cousin, the infamous Kang Young Pyo. Even someone like the stepmother knows about the S-rank hero. Kang Ti-woo might be notorious as a piece of trash in the hero world, but everyone knows how close he is to his powerful cousin. In reality, Kang Ti-woo is just a pawn doing all sorts of dirty work under his cousin's orders. Both of them are sick in the head. If Ti-woo is arrested by the police and slandered by the media, it won't be good for the S-rank hero's image either. In fact, he has already taken steps to deal with that random punk. Public relations disaster. The evil stepmother has made her decision. She wants to meet with Kang Young Pyo as soon as possible. On top of that dog Hang Chang from HCS Capital has shamelessly allied himself with the enemy. He's taking care of Dojin's family now. Because of this, the stepmother, who is a prosecutor, on the line in a minute. Those who abandon her group will pay the price in full. The next day, we follow a group of heroes entering one of the 37 rift zones in Korea. Among these zones, 5 are being turned into safety gates. The rest can only be raided by heroes affiliated with hero associations on coordinated schedules. Today, Miss Jo Yan is leading a team with her S-rank ID. She has practically unlimited entries into any gate. Amidst the diverse crowd of heroes equipped with sophisticated gear and weapons, a young man wearing a worn-out sweatshirt stood out. And Jo Yan chose the A-rank Jinju's Cleome Guild as a temporary party for the hunt. It's very rare to participate in an S-rank hunt, so they are excited. Jo Yan argued that she simply wanted to have some fun and stretch her muscles. In reality, she had set up this whole situation just to give the young man behind them a clean entry through the gate. Commander Dojin agreed to sell the rest of his stock of magic crystals at market price to Jo Yan if she took him into the restricted rift zone. He just wanted to make more money by hunting in higher level zones. Although it's true that rift zones harbor all sorts of treasures, entering such a difficult one in search of profit without fear is simply insane. Well, she didn't really care. She just needed to get her hands on those hero magic crystals. After a few minutes of traversing a dark tunnel, the party finally emerged on the other side into a wooded and sunlit area. Unable to contain her curiosity, Jinju started pestering Jo Yeon about the true identity of the young man following them. Jo Yeon just introduced Dojin as someone she knew, but no one bought that evasive answer. Jinju speculated that he might be the Queen Jo Yeon's boyfriend. Tired of all the fuss, she told Jinju a half-truth and confessed that the young man was there because she owed him a favor. It's not every day that a rank hero owes someone a favor. While the group was absorbed in their respective conversations, a giant shadow blotted out the sun. Everyone turned their gazes to the sky and saw the beast. Being an A-rank guild, the Cleome heroes reacted immediately, drawing their weapons and taking their positions. The first encounter was with none other than the fearsome Basilisk. As the experienced raider she is, Jo Yeon took command and gave clear, concise orders. Jinju and Do Young were in charge of defense, while Sungu aimed for the legs. Before she could finish assigning everyone's roles, a figure emerged like a blur, passing by everyone. With a powerful leap, he closed the aerial distance between himself and the flying beast. Dojin ignored the group's time-consuming plans and went for a direct confrontation with the bird. The Cleome heroes were left dumbfounded. They had never seen anyone so audacious. Concentrating energy into his fist, Dojin prepared for the first strike. Before his charge, the guildmaster Jinju was lamenting her bad luck. They had barely entered the gates and a troublesome opponent had already appeared. Before the group could even get organized and into position, Dojin had already dropped his backpack on the ground while Zhou Yun was giving orders. He cut through the air like a bullet. He was a true speed demon. In a single leap, he neutralized the bird's aerial advantage. High up, he took control of the field with ease. His fiery energy was dense and intense. The giant chicken didn't have the speed or reaction time to block the incoming attack. As a result, it was forced to take a powerful punch to the beak. The bird was on the ground and the human was in the clouds, an almost poetic reversal. Dojin landed in front of the group. He didn't even break a sweat. The basilisk was on the verge of death, the mark of his fist visible on the side of its face. The members of the Cleome Guild stood gaping beside their S-Rank's porter. They witnessed the brutality of what happened next. Dojin lifted his leg and began to stomp on the bird's head until it was reduced to a meat paste. It might seem like overkill, but killing a basilisk requires immense strength. With every stomp and kick, the sound of cracking skulls and gushing blood horrified the group. Now Inju was really curious to know who that guy was. To be honest, Ju wasn't too sure either. All she knew was that Seo Dojin was a very strong human. Well, calling him simply strong would be a massive understatement. There are only a select few heroes who can do what Dojin just did. Killing a basilisk with a single blow is no ordinary feat. Juon downplayed the achievement by mentioning her sister. That woman belongs to the elite list of exceptional heroes. Still, Inju couldn't just ignore the fact that a hidden talent was among them. She watched the entire sequence, in awe the entire time. Juon noticed the young man's monstrous power and determination, and her curiosity grew. She turned to Inju with a sudden change of plans. For now, she wanted to go to the center with Dojin, leaving the rest of the group on the outskirts. Juon carefully approached the young man, who was skillfully carving up the basilisk's corpse for loot. Before she could speak, he preemptively stated that he wouldn't share the loot with people who contributed nothing to the hunt. Fortunately, Ju wasn't after a few pieces of magic crystals. She just suggested they go a little deeper into the portal to a place more challenging and suited to their current skills. With a smile, he promptly accepted the invitation to hunt and loot more. Juon knew the layout of that portal very well, so she would lead the way. All Dojin needed to do was follow her closely so he wouldn't get lost. Without warning, she shut off her speed, causing a sonic boom. Dojin watched calmly as her figure disappeared over the horizon. After shouldering his backpack, he took a stance, storing energy in his muscles. With a single explosive step, he kicked up a blast that nearly sent the Cleome Guild heroes flying. Inju figured that if Ju was a bullet, then that man moved at the speed of light itself. Left behind by the two powerhouses, the rest of the heroes turned to their guild leader to come up with a new plan. Of course, trying to follow those two was absolutely impossible. Today, they had to accept that they were mere extras. Even so, this was still a decent portal with plenty of monsters to hunt on the outskirts. In the outside world, ordinary people praised them as powerful A-rank heroes. But in front of a true S-ranker, they weren't even worth mentioning. Juon and that man are light years ahead of the entire strength of the Cleome Guild. Speaking of them, their race through the forest is going at a blistering pace, maintaining a dizzying speed without much effort. Juon kept checking her flank for any sign of Dojin. Finding no sign of the guy, she started to relax, thinking that maybe she had gone overboard with the initial sprint. Just as she was thinking of slowing down, Dojin suddenly appeared by her side, asking if they could go a bit faster. June's concentration shattered and she almost tripped. She had never experienced anything like this before. Someone could actually keep up with her in terms of running speed. When it comes to speed, she's one of the top 2 in the country, but that list might need an update, considering how Dojin was leaving her in the dust. A few moments later, he stopped to tease her for being slower than expected, when she was clearly sprinting to show off her speed. While the S-rank speedster caught her breath, Dojin turned his gaze to the sight on the horizon. Before them, a massive mountain range reached for the heavens. When he asked what lay within that rocky range, Ju's expression became solemn. That place is the lair of Thrift's boss monster, the Carcilion. You see, this Carcilion is a giant 20-meter monster that resembles a draconic bird. June doesn't even entertain the idea of subjugating that beast. It usually takes at least 3 combat-focused S-rank heroes to even have a chance against a monster like that. One thing Dojin knows about the Carcilion is that it has a chance to drop a magic crystal of imaginary grade, a treasure just below the highest possible grade. Since such a tempting reward awaits him, he's not going to let it slip away. Ju obviously was another matter. Obviously was. Opposes such a reckless idea, while Dojin is going to fight that draconic bastard with or without her, and as for Juon, she watched him accelerate fearlessly with the goal of climbing the mountains to kill the beast. She felt as if she had no choice but to follow him into madness, into something dark. The duo waits inside the monster boss's lair, brimming with an unshakable confidence to defeat a beast that is a tough match for even 3 S-rank heroes. And Juan is deeply shaken. You know what's even more shocking? Upon arriving at the scene, she finds the very same creature, the Carrion, dead at his feet. The fight was already over and she had no idea what had happened. Our hero casually pulls his knife from the creature's corpse, leaving her speechless. Juan reflects on her shock. The creature he just defeated wasn't just any boss. At that moment, she recalls a prominent hero known as Park Hae-yu, who built a reputation for hunting monsters like the Carcilion. Although he himself was an S-rank hero, the first time he went to hunt the Carcilion, he was cautious enough to take 30 A-rank heroes with him. Even with all these precautions, the A-rank heroes didn't stand a chance and were all slaughtered in the attempt. Park Hae-yu was the only known survivor of the group who was clinging to life by a thread at the end of the boss fight. From that moment on, he decided to face the same monster again, only this time armed with another S-rank hero and 100 A-rank heroes. It was practically a small army. The fight was brutal. They focused on piercing the creature's wings and preventing its flight, which the Carcilion at the time was then subjugated by a barrage of attacks from the heroes. This reminds me of the recent debate about 100 men versus a gorilla. By the way, I am betting on the men. And the same thing happened with the Carcilion, which was eventually defeated. Despite that, only a few heroes survived that battle. The rest were slaughtered by the beast's fury. The damage suffered that day was so great that Hae-yu's guild switch life still hasn't recovered 3 years later. And yet this ordinary-looking guy defeated the same monster Carcilion without much difficulty. The funny thing is, with his constant death glare, he reminds her that she's not getting any of these precious gems for just standing around while he fought. The comment may have annoyed her, but Juan is more focused on the absurdity of the man before her. If she hadn't witnessed the battle herself, she would never believe such an outcome, or even that a terrifying monster was defeated and obliterated with a single blow at the hands of one man. As for Dojin, our boy managed to extract the incredible-looking magic stone from the creature's body. He looks at her and says he doesn't care about having a guide anymore. From this point on, he'll manage on his own. He also refuses the rest of the valuable items from the dragon's body, like its claws and teeth, showing little to no appreciation for them. He turns to dismiss her flatly, leaving the S-ranker utterly stunned. Instead, he prefers to focus his energy on collecting the monster crystals. He goes so far as to let her keep all those valuable items as payment. Juan observes the creature for a moment and concludes she doesn't need anything from the beast either. It's nighttime now and the rest of the group is shocked that a single man managed to collect 3 bags full of magic stones. It's an unbelievable sight even for competent A-rank heroes. For their guild to gather the same amount, it would take a minimum of 20 hours. And considering the quality of the materials more than 3 days, this raises the question of the man's identity. And everyone stares intently at Juan, who brought him along, and looks just as confused as they are. In Juan's own words, the guildmaster of the Hankyu Guild can't understand how Dojin was able to defeat the Carcilion without any proper gear. With this accomplishment alone, he already stands at the top of Korea's hero rankings, unparalleled in his strength. They just said that our boy is just built different. The A-ranker even thinks he might be the strongest in the whole world at his level. This impresses her. Speaking of him, an exhausted Dojin returns with more bags. In just 1 day of hunting, he's already collected a ton. At this point, the group begins to think that no one would believe them if they reported this to the outside world. Dojin's godlike power is just too insane for anyone to accept. Besides, they are explicitly instructed not to reveal a single word about what happened here today to the outside world, something they'll just have to accept. The beautiful S-rank hunter approaches our boy and chats about various things. From a distance, it looks like they're a couple flirting, but that's only in the eyes of her party members. I guess they're trying to convince themselves that he's the right guy for Juan. They also think he's the only man in the world who seems to be her perfect match for Juan, especially considering his monstrous strength. The funny thing is how the A-rank guildmaster quickly realizes that these two aren't the perfect couple she imagined. From the looks on their faces, they seem to be arguing. She can't believe there's anyone in the world capable of talking to Juan like that. What's even more shocking is how Dojin just hands her a backpack and silently walks away without another word. This leaves the guildmaster even more bewildered. As for the backpacks and the loot he had collected, Juan explains. It turns out Dojin is afraid of becoming a celebrity overnight if the outside world finds out he killed the Carcilion. Since that's obviously a problem for him, he's passing the credit on to her. Upon hearing his decision, both of them are left speechless. But the irony of it all is that the law of attraction seems to be at play, and Juan becomes curious to learn more about this mysterious young man she's smitten. Elsewhere, we get a better look at the famous S-rank hunter mentioned earlier, Hyo. He's training hard on his punching bag. His assistant is impressed with the training as it looks like he's about to explode with rage. As mentioned before, he's the guildmaster of Such life. The assistant helps him cool down, reminding him that a little resilience will go a long way in these trying times. Even the guildmaster agrees with this idea, believing that those who underestimate him will eventually suffer his wrath. And soon the time will come when everyone will admire his strength as the most powerful guildmaster. His assistant then brings up Hio's obsession with hunting Carcilions, which sets him apart from the others. He goes as far as to say that his name will be etched in the history books as the hero who defeated the Carcilion with the smallest squad. Funnily enough, that title will never be stolen by Dojin unless Stephen Hawking comes back from the dead and performs a miracle. The guildmaster shares his excitement with his assistant, rambling on about his own achievements. At the same time, the guild has been suffering major losses compared to 3 years ago. Even so, the only thing that brings a smile to his face is the certainty that he is the only one capable of defeating the Carcilion, a fact backed up by his one-eyed servant. Speaking of high-ranking heroes, the scene shifts to the office of Kang Jong-pyo, who is reading a report about Dojin's eventful night with Cha-Wu and how he annihilated young Pyu's cousin. Although Cha-Wu's intention was to lock the man inside the gate and trap him forever, a twist of fate resulted in an awakening. Furthermore, the client who tasked them with eliminating Dojin is actually Executive Director Hong Ri-ju, who is at the top of Korea's richest people list. It makes no sense for her to target someone in front of young Pyu. That is until he finds out that Dojin is actually her stepson. Although the boy was taken in by the family at age 7, the moment Riju's biological son was born, Dojin was kicked out of the family. This fact amuses Kang Jong-pyo, who remarks that not even wealth can stop someone from getting cast out. While discussing payment for the job, he learns they'll receive 3 billion, a paltry sum for him. And then, there's the fact that Cha-Wu was on the verge of death after his battle with Dojin, suffering numerous burns and bruises. The worst part is, he completely lost his sight and was crippled for life. And this only adds to the cruelty of Dojin's actions to the point where even someone like Kang Jong-pyo has to acknowledge his deeds. And yet Kang Jong-pyo revels in the thought that he would have made sure to lop off his limbs and crush his skull. At first glance, you probably thought he was bad, but now it's clear he's even worse. As they discuss the battle scene, it's mentioned that Dojin also was there and supposedly helped Dojum somehow. And this surprises him, and he seeks more information about the situation. He doesn't understand what's so special about Dojum. Unfortunately, not even his assistant knows anything specific about the meeting between the two since the case was discreetly closed. Furious, Yu grabs his servant and yells at him to do whatever it takes to find out the status of their relationship, suspecting they might have made some kind of deal. The assistant, completely devastated by the reaction, immediately runs off to investigate. Yeon-pi, overcome by a fit of rage, destroys everything around him, thinking that Riju's men will come after him to finish the job his cousin couldn't do. At the same time, he is more than willing to take her on. After all, she's a rich woman with a fortune like Andrew Tate's, so it won't be a problem for the greedy scoundrel. And now for the scene with our protagonist who is returning home after the attack. With today's experience, he is more than happy to have spent his time in a rift than in a gate for a real hunt. This also complicates things, because he might have to develop a lasting relationship with Juan to ensure he remains low-key. Recalling the conversation, she bluntly said that people would become suspicious of her and start asking about the identity of the one who killed the Carcilion. Revealing that would mean attracting a lot of trouble. So for now, their plan was to store the valuables, and if he wanted to become famous, she could reveal their existence to the world without any problems. In response, Bro tossed her the bag to store the good stuff. This also means he needs to find another method to enter the rift zones, because depending on Juan would only bring him trouble. Even so, tonight's sleep will be good since he'll get to rest in a luxurious house that Changobi arranged for him. But upon entering the house, he is startled by the number of shoes outside. This means that some unexpected guests have arrived. Upon entering the living room, he sees a group of men in suits and their boss talking with his loved ones. The guy looks like a more depressed version of Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen and is staring at Dojum like a hawk. Young runs to greet her brother joyfully while Dojum is baffled by the situation. Prosecutor Park It-young reveals his identity clearly and directly, pointing out the connection to Dojang Seobi. Due to his relationship with the individual, Dojum is immediately taken into police custody for allegedly participating in the loan sharking scheme run by the corrupt CEO of HCS Capital. Letting the situation play out, Dojun peacefully surrenders to pre-trial detention, supposedly related to the loan sharking operation of Hwan Chang Seobi. He is promptly handcuffed and held in a simple interrogation room. From inside the room, he hears a voice arrogantly speaking on the phone outside. The prosecutor who arrested him is assuring someone that both Hwan Chang-gobi and Dojun are behaving like good boys. Before hanging up, the prosecutor thanks the caller for taking care of his daughter's studies abroad. Then, he made the mistake of saying Director Hwan's name within earshot of Dojum's superhuman hearing. Walking over to his silent detainee, the prosecutor rambled on about why he became a man of the law. He claimed that since he was a child, he always wanted to separate the scum of society from the decent and law-abiding citizens. Placing a thick stack of documents on the table, the despicable prosecutor made a point of showing how much dirt he had on Dojin. He claimed that the charges listed in his preliminary investigation would be enough to put the young man behind bars for at least a decade. Furthermore, they had already collected more than enough testimony from Wan Chang-seobi to incriminate everyone involved in the operation. Dojin didn't even bother to react to these veiled threats. Since he didn't get the reaction he was hoping for, the prosecutor resorted to name-calling. Going straight to the point, Dojin coldly asked if that Pomcher Hongri Jew was behind this ridiculous legal maneuver. The prosecutor was visibly shaken, but he vehemently denied the accusations, even saying he had never heard of that name. Dojin figured that those scoundrels must have already working for Wang Chang-seob, and Dojin came quietly to avoid problems, but things could get much worse at this rate. Refusing to be intimidated by Dojin's aura, the prosecutor boasted that people in his profession are not easily intimidated. In response, the young man let out a bit of killing intent to shut the idiot up. The prosecutor nearly soiled himself in fear right there. He felt that piercing gaze on a primal level, a direct threat to his very existence. Embarrassed for being frightened by a handcuffed criminal, the prosecutor wanted to gather his courage and beat up the inmate before he could commit the last stupid act of his life. An intern interrupted him, asking him to step out of the interrogation room for a moment. They had just received information about an absurd discrepancy in Dojin's file. The building's hero detector had classified the young man as an ordinary person. Even after double-checking, the result remained the same. Considering the recent incidents in which Dojin was involved, how did this make any sense? Perhaps they were wrong to label him as an awakened one from the start. The prosecutor got all his information from Hong Ryu's T group, so the intel was supposed to be reliable. At the moment, Dojin was an indecipherable enigma. How could they charge someone considered a normal civilian for incidents involving superhumans? Inwardly, Dojin scoffed at the prosecutor for being such an incompetent dog. If he wanted to, he could simply break free from these flimsy handcuffs and destroy everything. As for the consequences, he could always take his grandmother and Yun Yang to safety, perhaps overseas, before resorting to a more brutal solution. Yun Yang, dressed in a suit and tie, entered the interrogation room. She must have heard about the wrongful arrest and had come to check on the situation. When asked why he was being detained, Dojin replied frankly that he himself wasn't sure of the reason. Fortunately, Ryan Yang advised him not to do anything reckless. She was perhaps the only person who knew what this guy was capable of. The situation was frustrating, but using force now would only make matters worse. Ryan Yang hadn't expected to get involved with the legal system, but she was certain that Dojin was innocent of any charges. With an innocent person facing unjust punishment due to false accusations right in front of her, she felt obligated to correct the situation. Ryan Yang figured that the Hero Association would launch a separate investigation soon. They would undoubtedly discover Dojin's fake license and would certainly investigate the recent Rift Map incident. Dojin asked Ryan Yang how his family was, and she realized she was being treated like a simple secretary. When the young man stared at her with an indecipherable intensity, Ryan Yang relented and assured him that his family would be looked after. As she left the interrogation room, essentially becoming Dojin's legal representative, he proclaimed that this debt would not be forgotten. She wouldn't show it, but Ryan Yang was happy to know he was trusting her this time. She promised she would resolve this issue as quickly as possible, and she wasn't kidding. The method Ryan Yang chose was not a direct legal defense to prove Dojin's innocence. Instead, she exposed the various crimes and illegal dealings of prosecutor Park Choyong, which resulted in his dismissal. Once that scumbag was out of the picture, a fair investigation flowed smoothly. Agent Dojin was found innocent in connection with the loan sharking operation and other recent incidents. However, he did not completely escape punishment as expected. The investigation proved he had used an unauthorized hero license. Thanks to Ryan Yang's active defense, he got off with only a probationary sentence. While they were driving back to Dojin's house, a breaking news story about a never-before-seen monster that had appeared in England and was causing destruction came over the radio. The monster was described as a praying mantis-like creature, 1.5 meters tall with compound eyes and frightening jumping power. Based on the description, Dojin identified the creature as a Makajum, and Ryan Yang nearly crashed the car upon hearing him utter the name. Information on newly discovered monsters is heavily protected by the association. She only knows what a Makajum is because of her status as an S-class hero. You see, monsters aren't just randomly named by some when they die. They drop magic stones that contain not only condensed energy but also unique information. By analyzing this encoded data, it's possible to learn a lot about a monster, including its true name. On modern-day Earth, they use science and technology for analysis. On the other hand, magic was used in the ruined world. In other words, Dojin is incredibly familiar with the monsters that appear in both worlds. He knows their names and everything there is to know about them. he casually let it slip that the Mechajons can be easily controlled using the fluid of the red flower ant. The fluid is harmless to humans but acts as an extremely potent paralyzing toxin for the Mechajons. Spray these bugs and they'll stop their rampage. Run. Juan became serious for a moment. Every move and word from him only deepened the mystery. Who exactly is this Dojin? No matter how much she tried to uncover his true identity, Dojin never gave her an answer. His mind was elsewhere. He was crafting a plan to prevent all future problems. The only reasonable solution he could think of was to kill that witch Hong Riju. Speak of the devil director. Hong is on the verge of a nervous breakdown, nervously biting her nails, consumed by anxiety. She was trying to come up with new plans to deal with her husband's bastard son. With someone like Run Juan involved, the pressure to resolve the situation was only mounting. The director's assistant wasn't being much help. Even after exhausting all their resources, they couldn't figure out the nature of the relationship between the S-rank hero and Dojin. If they made a mistake and offended someone of that level, all the company's money wouldn't be enough to protect them. More importantly, Hon Riju was alarmed by the prosecutor's report, which indicated that Dojin had registered as an ordinary citizen and not as a hero on the hero detectors. Based on everything they knew about the boy, it was quite obvious that he had awakened something dangerous. Maybe he had some ability to trick the hero detector or something of the sort. Hon Riju is losing money left and right on this crusade of hers, and the best her team can do is speculate. Completely furious, she finally gathered her courage and contacted the S-rank scoundrel Kang Young-pel, offering 20 billion, no 30 billion won to solve this problem with Dojin once and for all. Upon receiving the call, the scoundrel greedily demanded double the payment to handle this small problem. Even his subordinates found it a bit absurd to demand 60 billion for a simple job. He may be a despicable scoundrel, but Kang Young-pel is also a cunning one. He realized that Hon Riju had no more options, no more alternatives. Besides, her company generates so much revenue that 60 billion won wouldn't even be missed from the coffers. To top it off, Run Juan is now part of the equation. Since Kang Young-pel is taking on the risk of fighting another S-rank hero, doubling the initial offer becomes a bit more reasonable. The subordinate agreed that Run Juan is indeed a dangerous opponent. Hearing his employee praise another S-rank hero wounded Kang Young-pel's fragile ego. He cursed out his subordinate for doubting his ability to fight someone like Juan. He claimed he could take out that wench in about 20 minutes. Of course, the subordinate had to calm down his boss, fearing for his life. With a disturbing smile, Young-pel shifted the topic to his negotiation with the Hero Association. He is also negotiating a deal before traveling to the United Kingdom as one of South Korea's representatives to help with the insect problem. Unfortunately for Young-pel, the association is tightening its belt. Moreover, those cunning bastards have already announced the selection process for the hero dispatch to the public. They are practically making it difficult for S-rank heroes to refuse the deployment. Young-pel may be a thug, but he sees the association as a group worse than thugs. The operation will take place in 3 days. South Korea will send its best and brightest, along with Japanese heroes. At least Pel will meet someone named Takashi. At the moment, the Mechajon's weakness has not yet been discovered. Being the one to uncover such crucial information would skyrocket anyone's prestige in the public's eyes. Speaking of Mechajons, these insects advance towards Cambridge in the United Kingdom. The British heroes have been fighting tirelessly to stop the threat of the giant creatures. They assembled a decent team of heroes. Since this is the United Kingdom, they use a lot of blades in this region. The brave soldiers on the front lines are struggling to deal with the single giant Mechajon terrorizing the population. This praying mantis has the speed and sharpness to kill slow heroes with a single blow. Getting into the rhythm of the situation, the British heroes retaliated with a coordinated attack. The group of heroes had a balanced formation, and, considering their proficiency, they were nothing to scoff at. Some of them used magic to forcefully break through the thick exoskeleton. Others, in turn, delivered swift melee attacks, letting the insect's blood run through the streets. With proper coordination and enough power, they managed to take down their first Mechajon just to make sure the son of a gun didn't have a second phase or something like that. They cut off its praying mantis head. The British heroes finally claimed a victory, but a single monster required everything they had, completely destroying their morale. But a few more Mechajons emerged to take advantage of the heroes' fatigue. That night, the best heroes the United Kingdom could offer perished in a brutal and bloody massacre. They did their best and pushed themselves to the limit to try and stop the inevitable. Without clear information, they were defenseless against unknown enemies. The troublesome Mechajons now advance south. The unwavering defense of Cambridge has crumbled. Currently, there are about 60 kilometers between the insects and the capital, London. As the Mechajons prepared for the final attack that would wipe London off the map, something luminous fell from the sky. When the fluid came into contact with the insects, they collectively became paralyzed, feeling an agonizing burn. After a few seconds of trying to resist the effects, the Mechajons fell one by one. The paralytic agent spread through their systems, rendering all their terrifying weapons useless in the face of biological warfare. High above the source of the rain revealed itself a helicopter closely following the army of praying mantises. At a safe distance aboard the helicopter were the heroes from South Korea and Japan from the Joint Cavalry. Every one of them was surprised that such a simple solution proposed by Reincarnated had worked. The red flower ant sap was working wonderfully well. The Macasians didn't stand a chance. They practically turned into empty, useless husks. Beside Reincarnated was Kang Yang Pyo. In his opinion, there was no way that woman could have guessed and hit the nail on the head, waking everyone from their daydream. Eonong took command and ordered everyone to parachute down to complete the mission. With renewed respect and admiration for Korea's elite heroine, the cavalry plunged towards British soil to avert a disaster. A few days after the joint operation, the whole world learned about what happened in the United Kingdom and who the undisputed MVP of the operation was. Back in Korea, the media and fans crowded the airport, all eager to see the nation's pride. The reporters and their crews were eager for an exclusive report on Ryeon-yeon, the top hunter during the UK expedition. She was the one who discovered the weakness of the Macasians and led the operation to the very end. She practically saved an entire nation from despair. It's said that before she left, she was decorated by the royal family for her heroism. When Ryeon-yeon finally set foot in the airport, camera flashes and cheers from the crowd erupted. As a true celebrity, she was already used to the spotlight. Behind her, Kang Yang Pyo was trying to project an aura as if he didn't have a disastrous haircut. Even as a public figure, the intensity of today's reception was still a bit overwhelming. As for Kang Yang Pyo, he was credited with killing the majority of the Macasians on the expedition. Keep in mind, he basically killed paralyzed and defenseless insects. The entire hero contingent was composed of 200 people. The brilliant performance of the Korean heroes was the reason the United Kingdom still exists today. In the news, details about the hunt for the Macasians, including the weakness to the red ant sap, were disclosed. Walking through the city, our friend Seiyu Dojin heard the news and he paused for a second. He was happy that Yeon had managed to use his information, but when they showed Kang Yang Pyo on the big screen, his mood soured. That arrogant idiot on the screen is another one he needs to eliminate soon. In some fancy restaurant, Dojin has coffee with the woman of the hour, Juan. She kindly brought a ton of gifts for little Un, his grandmother, and even for our boy. She warned him not to check the contents now. It would be better to open everything at home. Ignoring the warning, Dojin found some nice clothes among the gifts. Juan simply wanted to give him a small gift as thanks for the valuable tip. Thanks to Dojin's casual information, she became the most sought-after hero in the world. Compared to the benefits she was receiving, some nice clothes were practically nothing, so she promised to buy Dojin a car or anything else that he wanted. The guy had hit the sugar mommy jackpot. She already knew Dojin wouldn't reveal how he discovered the weakness of the Macasians, but she asked anyway. As expected, it's impossible to get anything out of that man. Changing the subject, Juan asked about his plans for the future. He's not the type to preach world peace or anything arrogant, but if he sets his sights on Hong Riju and Kang Yang Pyo, things are going to get messy. To the surprise of Juan, Dojin's only immediate plan right now is to buy a new house. After all, the safe house where his family is staying is rented. While the current star hero and the former sword god were reconnecting, the other hero who stood out in the United Kingdom expedition was enjoying life, Kang Yang Pyo. He was enjoying his welcome back party at the pool with several women surrounded by girls. This scoundrel can't get one woman in particular out of his head, Juan. He knows she wasn't this formidable before. Somehow she changed. He finds it interesting that she's hiding how she discovered the weakness of those insects. On the flight back to Korea, Yang Pyo also tried to provoke her and pry information out of her about this Dojin. He mentioned how Juan stepped in to save the day when Dojin got involved with a corrupt prosecutor. She was also present when Kang Chai-woo was beaten up. Knowing that he was trying to piss her off, Juan stated that Chai-woo the idiot started the fight. Before that, he tried to assassinate Dojin and failed. The face of Kang Yang Pyo twisted into a sick smile, and he agreed. He also blamed the fool for letting himself be blinded by money. Even so, he's still his dear cousin. He can always use their relationship as an excuse to get revenge on this Seo Dojin guy. For a brief moment, Juan almost let an emotion slip while being watched closely by that cunning guy. She immediately distanced herself from the conflict and insisted that she was in no position to interfere if something happened. Kang Yang Pyo was confused. He really thought she was closer to that Dojin guy. Ignoring him for the rest of the flight, Juan put her sleep mask back on and went back to dozing off. Even after that conversation, Yang Pyo still couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't being entirely truthful. Kang Yang Pyo's paranoid side still keeps him wary of Seo Dojin. Back in England, the original site of the outbreak in Long Sutton was the Brush. The damage from the monster wave was still visible. The British Hero Association mobilized what little hero forces they had inside the rifts to at least secure the magic stones before the second wave emerged. Some of the guards outside commented on how they could have easily stood out as D-rankers if they had known that the Macajons could be defeated with just a bit of red flower ant sap. And if their forces had managed to block the wave early on, they could have collected an absurd amount of magic stones. You see, once a rift opens with a monster wave, it can never be converted back into a portal. For the second wave, it's highly likely that a different type of monster will emerge. There are many records of entire countries being wiped out by the second wave. The unknown factor is the worst part. Suddenly, the rift vibrated. The strike team had entered a short time ago to collect stones inside. It had only been 5 hours. It wasn't time for them to come out. Even so, the D-rank guards reinforced their watch since desperate civilians often try to steal stones. Loot was a common sight near the rifts. Instead of the usual sequence of people opening the rift, everything seemed to shatter. Instead of the mining team, something or someone came out of the rift. Its humanoid face was scarred and the armor it wore looked otherworldly. This guy definitely was not a hero. His uniform, his scars, they didn't even look realistic. Before the poor guards could contact headquarters, they lost control of their bodies and floated into the air. The man took a single step and seemed to teleport, lifting the guards effortlessly. The #1 British guard tried to fight back using the UK's signature weapon, 3 knives. The flying blades hit their target, but multiple circular green lights made them disappear as if they had never existed. In a hoarse voice, the man complained that these guards were too weak. He clenched his fist and made the green lights move. As a result, the guards were brutally cut and torn apart, losing their limbs. Imagine being turned into a limbless mannequin at work. A dark mist emanated from the man's body. Using this dark mist, he dominated the space and took one of the guards' smartphones. He checked the current date and calculated that 10 years had passed since he last set foot on Earth. And yet, his mission wasn't even 20% complete. After all his effort to open dimensional rifts, was it finally time to admit his failure? No, he just needs to increase the mana concentration to get back on track. But before that, this planet needs a good cleansing. It's about time to eliminate the weak. Back in South Korea, more specifically in the Paju region, a young man ventured out on one of his routine farming runs. Oblivious to what was happening on the other side of the globe, carrying only a backpack, Dojin was walking through the restricted area. Suddenly, his senses sharpened as he noticed abnormal vibrations in the ground just as he expected. A battalion of disgusting worm monsters emerged, eager for a taste of flesh. Their bodies were covered in metallic spikes, their mouths filled with sharp fangs. Dojin was in the middle of the party, completely calm and unfazed by the ostentatious display of power. Instead of looking at the monsters, he turned his attention downward to the holes that the worms had made. He sized up the hole with his eyes and estimated that there were about 26 underground worms within a 100-meter radius. With a wry smile, he concentrated mana in his hand. Eager to test the bugs, he wondered how many worms would survive his initial attack. He launched the concentrated mana blast toward the hole, and an eerie silence followed. After a few seconds of waiting, the long-awaited explosions finally spread through all the other hideouts in the area. Along with debris and scorching flames, every writhing worm below was forced to the surface to escape being cooked alive. Dojin is adept at working smarter, not harder. With this technique, he doesn't have to worry about getting dirty. While he was busy collecting free stones from the disgusting worms, a meeting of utmost importance was taking place in the city. Min Honki, the vice director of the Korean Hero Association, and his boss, and Ta Wong, were discussing a young man who was proving difficult to handle. Of course, they were referring to Dojin. According to reports, the guy's strength couldn't even be measured with the standard hero meter. Other executives at the association, especially the vice president Park Seong-chu, found it absurd and threatening to have a presence like that roaming freely around the country. They wanted Dojin to answer to the association. According to information from the vice director, everything bizarre about Dojin started with Kang Chao's evil plan. After awakening in the gate attack where he should have died, DJN changed drastically. Later, he got his revenge and single-handedly dealt with the new rift in Mappo. Yes, he showed excessive behavior from time to time, but he always had a good reason for it. Overall, Dojin's power can be classified as an overwhelming force. Nata Wong reflected that a wild horse is the hardest to tame. Even so, they have a good horse in the stable, and that's what matters. What prompted this discussion was Dojin's request for an official hero license he received a special privilege to skip the standard procedures since he had a sponsor. Of course, this sponsor was the nation's S-rank sweetheart, Ryan Juon. Upon learning of his connection with the Golden Girl, the association's veterans were flabbergasted knowing they couldn't afford to offend Ryon Juon, given how popular her name is at the moment. Dojin's request for a hero license was granted smoothly and swiftly. He was named the 8th S-rank hero in South Korea and had never even set foot in the association thanks to his new status. He can finally hunt in any rift zone he desires at will. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. The way he wreaked havoc in the Paju Rift Zone incinerating dangerous worms quickly reached the ears of the association's director. That intimidating old man was quite amused by the fact that the country's newest S-rank hero was already living up to the title. It's not every day you hear about a hero entering a grade 2 rift alone without any guild members or allies to back him up. It's sheer insanity in the eyes of normal people. The vice president, who was the one who so strongly opposed Dojin, now advocates for revealing the young man's identity to the public so the association can start promoting a new rising star. Fortunately, the president rejected this stupid and greedy idea. Min Hunky stated that they should first consult the man's opinion before exposing him to the life of a public figure. The vice president argued that since they are in an era of instability, giving the people another symbol of hope in the form of a new hero of S-rank would alleviate the stress of the masses. Mr. VP tried his best to sell the idea to director Tai Wong, but the old man preferred to be prudent. Before the association takes any action, he wants to meet the kid in person. Speaking of the devil, Dojin continues his worm-killing marathon. If he's not using mana explosions, he's using good old-fashioned brute force, and as he cuts down one poor worm, the rest of the crawling bastards close in on him. They might be tough opponents for ordinary heroes, but their movements are practically predictable in Dojin's mind. With his hand strengthened by the fiery power of his mana, he delivered a wide blow that burned and decapitated a dozen worm monsters at once. He landed back on the ground and dozens of dead worm carcasses fell at his feet. Dojin stood atop the mountain of corpses observing an ore farm like geez. His hands still burned from the after effects of his technique. He sighed and dispelled the last remnants of mana as expected. The mana consumption from continuously hunting and killing hordes of high-level monsters was no joke. To remedy this problem, Dojin finally decided to get a proper weapon. Suitable. As expected, the best place to get the necessary equipment was the Gasan Hero Complex. Dojin chose a discreet shop and went inside. There, inside a scruffy-looking fellow was behind the counter messing with his phone to kill time. The welcome bell rang and he didn't even look up to see who had arrived, asking if the customer had a reservation. Dojin ignored the punk's question and threw his bag on the counter demanding they forge him a weapon. Using the materials inside, annoyed the punk stated they don't serve people without a reservation. Dojin had been rejected by all the other shops on the street that claimed to be fully booked. This was the only shop that answered his call. Even so, the punk refused to serve Dojin point blank. He was simply furious about having to look away from his phone. With his patience wearing thin, Dojin grabbed the punk by the collar and ignoring the threats and curses, he asked the brat who the owner of the shop was. The punk proudly declared that his father was the owner. If that's the case, you'd better call daddy as soon as possible. Dojin came here specifically on the recommendation of a trusted person. The punk was released. He scoffed but cowardly retreated to another room and called his father. An old man wearing a modified welding mask came out of the workshop to see what was going on. His name was Choi Chin, a master craftsman of hero armaments. Dojin told him that he came here on the recommendation of Ryun Jueon. Of course, the father and son knew that name. In fact, the entire country knew that name. The old man was just surprised that an S-rank celebrity knew his craft. SEO didn't come all this way to chat, so he simply took the materials out of his backpack. The old master examined the materials thoroughly and identified them as fangs from a giant black viper. It had been a long time since he'd seen one. SEO Dojin wants a decent sword made from this material. He wants his weapon to be as long as possible. Who wouldn't, right, he said. The master craftsman argued against the request. Overstretching non-metallic materials would compromise their durability. It would be more effective to make 2 medium-sized swords. Hearing this flimsy proposal, Dojin asked if the old man was openly admitting to having inferior skills to create what the client wanted. Still, he doesn't want 2 swords, he just wants to fuse them into one. What matters is the length. Well, it also matters how you use it. Besides the absurd length, he wants the mana absorption rate maxed out. Hearing the incessant and almost irrational demands, the loafer couldn't stand aside any longer. He was proud of his father, a man capable of forging weapons with at least a mana absorption rate of TRCO2 level. Dojin responded by grabbing one of the swords displayed in the shop's window, examining the blade and rating the material as level 5. Then he gripped the sharp edge of the sword with his bare hands. Father and son stood in silent shock as the unusual customer performed a miracle. The grip continued until his immense strength shattered the level 5 material. The product the shop was so proud to display was reduced to nothing but dust and sharp debris. The bum thanked the heavens he hadn't messed with the mysterious customer. The old man watched his creation shatter. Dojin warned Choitin that if he intended to create trash with the available materials, he'd better give up the job immediately. If these hands can turn a level 5 weapon into fine dust, imagine what they could do to your face. After finally finding a shop that met his demands, CO Dojin set off for another one. Today his target was a one-eyed green-skinned freak of nature with its heightened senses. The Cyclops shrieked as it sensed a hostile presence nearby. While other hunters worry about the style of their gear, SEO Dojin hunts alone in jeans and a sweatshirt. Since he doesn't have a proper weapon yet, his hands will have to do for now. The Cyclops gave him no chance to strike, trying to crush him right off the bat. When the initial attack missed, the one-eyed bastard panicked. Dojin leaped into the air, compensating for the size difference. His hand with the sword moved at lightning speed, slicing a juicy chunk from the Cyclops' shoulder. The pain made the beast screech in a higher, more irritating pitch. Desperate to fight back, it used its monstrous strength and gigantic size to uproot an entire tree. It brandished the weapon like a madman, desperate to scare off the hooded monster. And unfortunately for the Cyclops, such aimless tactics wouldn't work against this man. He braced for the impact, and 2 more deep, gnarled wounds appeared on its shoulders. It was a bloodbath. Normally, this would be the end of the hunt if Dojin were facing any other monster. But Cyclopes are a special breed. They have regenerative abilities so powerful they can withstand and ignore fatal wounds. Dojin had taken this immense ability into account. If the enemy has insane healing, you just have to keep dealing damage. Without giving the Cyclops a chance to retaliate after a new regeneration, Dojin scratched, cut, and sliced his way through the tough flesh and grotesque innards. For a grand finale, he decapitated the giant monster and landed masterfully. It was a clean yet bloody victory. Over the green-skinned brute, SEO Dojin sighed, slightly exhausted. At the moment, maintaining a mana sword for long periods is still too demanding and inefficient. He grabbed his backpack and took out a jar. Dojin plunged that thing into one of the grotesque wounds he had inflicted on the Cyclops as if he were just collecting its juice. This was the exact purpose of today's expedition, to get some of that good Cyclops blood. He returned to the hero district at sunset. As usual, the bum was manning the counter. Then he, without a word, placed his jar of blood there, instructing the daddy's boy to give the jar to his father. With that, the 2 black viper fangs could be easily fused. After that brief explanation, he refused to give any more details and left the shop. All the basic materials for his weapon were gathered, but if he wanted a higher mana absorption rate, he would need one more ingredient. There's only one place on Earth to find it. And while he was planning and plotting a path to find this secret ingredient, his colleague Hank S. received a very important call. And Julian was having a relaxing vacation when he answered the call and heard a country mentioned Brazil. The sun was up and the water was perfect, but Yeonju-yeon couldn't even enjoy her vacation properly because of that call. And after the recent mission in Europe, the Korean Association decided to send its heroes to Brazil. This means that the Brazilian government and association have given up on closing the rift zones on their own. From what Jong knows, the monsters in Brazil are especially violent. But the amount of magic stones they drop is abnormally high. With so much money on the line, her Cleom guild is also slated to go. She insisted that Dojin accept the mission and go with the friend he was with a few days ago. Yeonju figured that the country's 8th S rank must be that guy they entered the dungeon with, Yeonju-yeon's supposed boyfriend. Yeonju fully supports this budding romance. She found it romantic that 2 extremely powerful people would hunt a fearsome Carcilion alone. After much insistence, Yeonju finally managed to convince Dojin to accept the mission in Brazil. However, she has no idea if the guy will even show up. Back at the small shop in the Gassen Hero Complex, Old Man Choi contemplated his own creation with admiration. He never would have imagined that non-metallic materials could be melted and fused using the blood of a Cyclops. If it weren't for that young man, he would have never discovered such a bizarre technique. With this, he can craft the sword to whatever size Dojin wants. They could reach a maximum limit of about 180 centimeters. Dojin's order is for a 2-handed blade with an adjustable hilt for one-handed strikes, something weighing about 5 kilograms. Old Man Choi was surprised to see yesterday's rude kid speaking so politely. He really does know good manners. Perhaps his weapon is really that important to him. Old Man Choi warned that 5 kilograms would be heavy to wield with one hand. It's not like he would only use the weapon once or twice. Dojin knows the specs he wants and isn't going to change his mind. Old Man Choi estimated that the crafting process would take at least a month, and the mana absorption rate should reach level 7. He wasn't satisfied with just level 7. That level wouldn't be enough to handle all of his power. As expected, does he really need the final boost from a specific ingredient? Dojin went toward the door and asked the old man to just finish the shape for now. The mana absorption enhancement can wait until he has the rest of the materials. As an experienced craftsman, Old Man Choi had an idea of the material the boy was referring to. He couldn't help but shiver. A few days later, Dojin went to the city to meet a very important woman, and Yeonju-yeon kept her promise. She gave him a brand new car. Dojin greatly appreciated the gift. She assured him it was nothing compared to everything he had done for her. It was just a $1 billion car, which was no big deal. When he thanked her with a smile, Yeonju got shy for a moment. As he inspected every inch of his new car, Yeonju asked what had happened with him at the Hero Association. After meeting with the bigwigs, those grumpy old men proposed making his information public. But Dojin demanded an exorbitant payment for that. He acknowledged that President Nat Wong cared about the common good, but politics complicated everything. Anyway, the negotiation failed. After the external inspection, Dojin got into his new car, and Yeonju Yeon hopped quietly into the passenger seat. While putting on her seatbelt, she mentioned the association's preparations for the impending operation in Brazil. Upon hearing her say Brazil, Dojin lowered his voice, leaned closer to her, and sincerely asked if she was going. Stunned, she barely managed to stammer out a yes. Yes. In that case, she invited Juan to go with them. The Brazilian S-ranker Riz is surreal. It made the national hero's heart pound and his cheeks blush, uncontrollably. Meanwhile, another woman was blushing because of Seojin. The wealthy Hong Riju was being scammed by Kang Young-pil to get even more money. He begged director Hong not to skimp at a time like this. He already had a $3 billion advance, and still wanted more. This man hadn't even started his supposed job of finally killing Seojin. Out of patience, Hong Riju seriously considered hiring someone to do the dirty work. She figured there were plenty of scoundrels out there willing to kill for a fortune, no questions asked. Kang Young-pil just laughed at her outdated information and then gave her a valuable tip. He had just found out that Seo Dojin had become the country's newest ranker. They were practically equals. Director Hong refused to believe that the weak child she had kicked out of her house had transformed into some kind of superhuman. Young-pil spent a fortune to get this information. If Hong Riju didn't want to believe it, she could just wait until Sojin went up that tower and killed the witch with his own hands. Desperate and afraid of retaliation, Director Hong stopped Young-pil. She was in deep trouble and didn't want to die. The madwoman promised to pay whatever it took to get Seojin out of the way. Young-pil smiled and replied, "I've changed my mind," instead of taking more money. He'd rather strengthen the business partnership with the director's conglomerate. At this point, Hong Riju would gladly accept any form of payment. It was then that he received a very important text message. It seemed the heavens were smiling on the damned lady. The perfect opportunity to eliminate Seojin had just arisen. A few days later, the entire nation was buzzing with the news of another international expedition for the national heroes. All the S-rankers who accepted the mission were aboard a luxurious private jet. On social media, people were excited to see 5 S-rankers save a country on the brink of annihilation. Korean users were bursting with pride. One of the S-rankers was Jiseo, who took on the P group alone. He only accepts missions if there's a lot of money involved. There's also Park Hui-hil. His guild had been reduced to nothing recently, so the cash reward for this expedition was desperately needed. Yum Ju-yoon, on the other hand, is the current national heroine of the country. She just saved Great Britain and is now heading to Brazil without a break. Kang Young-pil must be going after hearing about the tax exemption for every magic stone collected on the mission. Getting a single mid to high-level stone can change a common person's life forever. While the other S-rank heroes were being praised and discussed online, one particular figure generated more questions than rumors. Seojin was seen as a young rookie making his debut on the international stage, nothing fancy. With these 5 heroes at the top of the hierarchy, Brazil is about to get shaken up. After a long and quiet flight, the group finally arrived in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The Brazilian Hero Association gathered to discuss the procedures. They are eager to welcome the renowned Korean expedition team. They were the ones who responded the fastest among all the countries they requested help from. Some of the S-rank heroes didn't even check into the hotel and went straight into action. Still, the bigwigs are worried the Koreans might discover something they've been trying to suppress. There's no such thing as an eternal secret, so they need to ensure everything is under strict control until the end of the collaboration. The Brazilian national hero Moraes was defeated by some unknown entity. It was a gruesome death. He wasn't killed by a monster. His black box definitely captured the form of a human assassin. No one knows exactly what happened near the Santarem Rift. Right now, the Korean team is being briefed on the action plan. While everyone was listening intently, Ju-yoon was busy texting and looking for her Dojin. It turns out he stayed on the plane and took a connecting flight to a more distant destination. He's heading straight for the Santarem Rift. Ju-yoon couldn't help but worry. She just found out that this man is going alone to the most troublesome rift. Supposedly, the team was to go through a 2-day local adaptation period and would be assigned to the rift zones they had applied for. After the briefing, Jo-young didn't stick around for long and got into a taxi. Kang Young-po followed her to ask where she was going since they weren't supposed to have left yet. Just to get rid of him, she revealed that she was going to Santarem for a while. Young-po obviously found this suspicious. The Brazilian Association had explicitly warned them about the dangers of that place. The rift zone near Santarem had turned into an arid desert. Rion of Uyon and the Cleon Guild met up with Pseudo-Jun too. accompany him on his supposedly solo mission. Since they went to the trouble of rushing to that godforsaken place, June demanded to know why he was in such a hurry. Dojin claimed that they were the ones who were late. They bickered like an old married couple. Exhausted by her incessant questions, Dojin finally answered that he was going after the blue crocodile. It was a disappointing answer. Displeased with the casual way he spoke to her, June insisted that she was 3 years older and demanded a bit more courtesy. As they continued to bicker, the Cleon Guild just watched. The guild leader, young Eon-jo, had never met anyone with the audacity to boss June around. As they delved deeper into the rift, some members of the Cleon Guild hesitated to move forward without a proper plan, but June's presence in the group reassured them, ensuring they would be safe. There was no denying her skill, but it seemed like the rookie was taking the lead. While the others doubted the man up front, those who had participated in the dungeon raid a while back trusted the rookie's leadership. Confused and a little worried, June wanted to know if Dojin planned on closing the rift. He denied having such an ambitious goal. He had only come to collect materials and explore the zone to its fullest. After a few more minutes of a quiet walk, they finally ran into the clutches of the first obstacle. The Cleon Guild was composed of talented A-rank members, so they performed their respective roles masterfully. They had a clear hierarchy and precise communication for dealing with unexpected enemies. Even so, the Blue Crocs, despite their advanced nature, were more monstrous in person than in the pictures. All they could do was defend themselves, and the situation was getting too dangerous. With the group at a standstill, Dojin finally made a move, unsheathed his sword, and ordered the A-rank members out of the way. While everyone was watching him, this guy didn't miss the chance to farm aura. The old man knew that Dojin was eyeing the Blue Croc's heart, so he temporarily lent him a valuable sword. He aimed at the target ahead and shot off like a bolt of lightning. With a single precise strike, he turned the annoying Blue Crocs into pieces. He moved with such speed and decisiveness that he triggered the classic anime/effect of June! He was already sheathing his sword as they fell. Those who believed in the rookie from the start had their hopes confirmed, and those who doubted his leadership were shocked. That kid is just too strong. After that first setback, the journey to the Rift Zone proceeded without any major issues. The sun set and the group made camp. Gathered around the campfire, the members of the Cleon Guild couldn't stop talking about how Mr. Pseudo June had defeated a group of Blue Crocs all by himself with a single blow. He didn't even break a sweat. It's not public knowledge yet, but that's how he defeated the fearsome Carcilion too. One thing is for sure, this man is no ordinary hero. While the others gossiped, Dojin was busy watching his sickly-looking steak cook. Yu Ryun approached and asked if he had finished organizing the Blue Croc hearts. Well, the coolers he brought are full of them now. June still can't imagine what these hearts are for, turning her attention to the frying pan. She asked what kind of meat he was frying in there. It certainly wasn't beef. He casually replied that he was grilling blue croco meat. She could taste the meat if she wanted. There are plenty of provisions prepared for this expedition, yet this man is cooking what he'd hunted. Ignoring her disgusted expression, Dojin bit into his grotesque meal, chewed and swallowed it as if he were dining at a barbecue restaurant, using his knife as a fork. The scene was quite macabre. Even Jongju was impressed. They had so much normal food in stock, and yet their leader was chewing on cursed meat. After getting over her initial disgust, Yu Ryun grew curious, took a piece for herself, and stared at it for a while. In-ju wanted to stop her friend from doing something she might regret, but Jiu Ryun trusted Dojun's palate. As the piece of blue meat neared her mouth, In-ju could do nothing but watch in horror. Ju Ryun delicately bit into the rancid-looking meat. After swallowing a small portion, she was pleasantly surprised by the delicious taste, and so two people at the camp quietly enjoyed a bizarre meal. Curious Jang Ginju whispered and asked Mr. Seojun about the secret, how a relatively unknown person could charm someone like Jiu Ryun. Of course, she was inexperienced and had never had a boyfriend, but she wasn't the type to give her heart away to a man easily. So what had Dojin done to charm and seduce the national treasure of Korea to the point of making her try his meat? Hearing the mention of romance, it made him reminisce about his time at the Imperial Academy long ago before he even turned 20. When it came to romance, there was Miss Maisel Gray of the Congrain family. There was also the youngest daughter of the Lalian family, Luenda Lazulian. And of course his last refuge in the ruined world, the valiant knight Veronica. He got lost in past memories and was brought back to reality by Inju's whispers. As for his secret, he answered that Dojin is the moth drawn to her flame. Inju had never heard anything so cringeworthy in her entire life. Thus the night passed with a very amusing atmosphere. Even Dojin was smiling and having a good time. Back in Sao Paulo, Kang Young Pio was still enjoying the good life in a luxurious hotel suite. He was still wondering why Ju Ryun was in such a hurry to move out since the operation date hadn't even been set yet. According to his sources, she was moving out with Seudojun's and Jang Ginju's guild. He turned to his assistant and asked about the range of profitable monsters in the Santorin area. As far as he knew, there shouldn't be any that could be considered lucrative. Everything related to that bastard Dojin is just too unpredictable. Young Pio's worries dissipated when the detestable director Hong called him. As usual, she called to ask if the job was done. Hearing her impatience, Kang Young Pio asked if something had happened. Well, she was worried that her father might have found out about Dojin's ascension to S-rank. He was ordering the kid to return home. Now that the chairman of the Tolvito group, Hong Riju was more anxious than usual. Young Pio found her suffering entertaining. Still, he had finally found a suitable partner who would yield him immense profits. He would make sure she wouldn't be disappointed. He assured the arrogant director that Dojin wouldn't be able to return to Korea. Hearing this brought a sense of relief to Hong Riju. Kang Young Pio marked a spot on his map and prepared to contact someone named Takashi. Now that Dojin had holed himself up in an isolated location, his job had become much easier. At the break of dawn, the Santorin expedition team continued their journey with Dojin in the lead. Ju Ryun, acting as the navigator with the map, warned Dojin about the dangers of the jungle. The main one being the lynx. Of course, Dojin knew all about lynxes. Instead of staying away from the dense jungle, Dojin set off immediately down the most dangerous path. Ju Ryun knew that nothing would stop him once he set his sights on a goal, but she made him at least wear earplugs. Fortunately, she had prepared them in advance. The earplugs are necessary when fighting a lynx. Their shrieks have a bewitching effect that can paralyze the mind. Dojin knew this, but he refused to wear the earplugs. Ju Ryun didn't give up easily on trying to convince him to wear the earplugs. After all, the information and the warning came from the Brazilian treasure hunting hero, but he ignored it. Ignoring their pleas, Sejun silently and naturally traversed the dense Santorin forest, leaving them no other choice. Ron and the Cleon Guild were dragged into this treacherous detour. After a full day of non-stop hiking, they finally reached the monster's lair under the bright moonlight. The lynx stared at them like a predator watching its prey. It looked like a crazed, enormous cat. As soon as the beast made its presence known, Inju ordered his subordinates to cover their ears. While everyone panicked, Dojin just stared at the feline without moving. He was no prey. Two predators were sizing each other up. It was a contest to see who had the stronger aura. As expected, the lynx immediately opened its horrifying snout and let out a deafening screech. Hunu Ryun and the Cleon Guild members hurriedly covered their ears. Meanwhile, their Dojin just stood still, ignoring the sound. Noticing his strange calm, Jo Ryun wondered why he wasn't doing the bare minimum to defend himself from the lynx. Dojin lowered his hand and conjured a flaming ball of energy. With perfect precision, he hurled the projectile at the perched lynx with the moon as a backdrop. That certainly made the shrill screams stop. Recognizing him as a threat, the beast shot off at the last second. Dojin immediately unsheathed his sword and chased his prey on foot. Ju Ryun and the others caught their breath and followed him, but it still wasn't clear what the hell was going on. They ran through the depths of the forest and Dojin's footsteps abruptly stopped. The lynx that greeted them was just bait to lure unsuspecting victims to the pack's den. That feline was hit by Dojin's attack at the entrance, which is why it seemed furious. Suddenly, its eyes glowed with a warm, radiant light. Its gaze swept past the group of humans ahead and quickly locked onto a primary target. Ju Ryun was chosen. Her eyes met the lynx's piercing gaze. For an instant, she fell under the monster's spell. Fortunately, Dojin acted quickly to cover her eyes. He then calmly explained that a lynx's scream wasn't a death sentence. What paralyzed the prey's mind were the monster's magic eyes. The solution was simple, so everyone should just close their eyes for a moment and let the MC do the heavy lifting. Dojin confidently advanced with his sword in hand. Perhaps it was time to test his current limits. With the rising motion, his energy manifested a flaming arc adorned with clusters of power, a technique capable of turning a swordsman into a Super Saiyan, the first form of the Van sword skill. A miracle born from a single point, he extended the tip of his sword forward and steadily summoned a version much more condensed than his energy blasts. The pack of lynxes had never seen anything like it and didn't know how to react. As a result, our boy landed a direct hit with his ultimate skill. The ranked members of the Cleon Guild were dumbfounded and a little terrified, looking like a god gone mad. Dojin released the stored power from his sword's tip and the fiery climax incinerated everything in its path. The poor furry animals crawling on the branches realized they were in trouble a little too late. The pack suffered the impact of the A-rank miracle. Born from a single point, they were completely annihilated. The impact almost knocked the ladies off their feet, and not in a good way. When the spell's glow dissipated, the trail left behind revealed a horrifying sight. A section of the entire forest had been erased from existence. The earth was reduced to ash, and the one responsible for such destruction didn't even break a sweat. The creatures unlucky enough to attack the wrong guy were instantly fried. They had hyped up the danger level of these things so much and didn't even get a chance to show off their gear. If Jo Ryun had to sum up her dojin in one word, it would be unbelievable. Surprisingly, a single lynx managed to survive the blast that essentially obliterated its entire bloodline. Dojin isn't one to leave loose ends, so he calmly advanced to finish the job. In an act of desperation, the surviving lynx frantically tried to paralyze its executioner with its signature ability. Dojin was unfazed, slicing off its small, furry head without mercy. It was a clean cut that marked the end of tonight's one-sided hunt. The last thing the beast saw with his blessed eye was the face of the man who wielded Odin's blade knelt down and mercilessly plucked out the dead lynx's eye. Like a true hunter, he wouldn't let such a precious part go to waste. After incinerating the beasts and collecting their spoils, the group returned to a safer path, with an even higher opinion of Dojin watching him with infatuated gazes. Everyone was thinking the same thing. The man leading the expedition was definitely beyond the human level. Some would place him above the iconic hero Xaver Alphonse. Others would go as far as to rank him on the same level as Kaylur, the world's strongest hero at the time. The journey back to the normal route wasn't without its obstacles. They had barely reached the swampy area when some grotesque humanoid creatures were already bothering them. These monsters had no awareness of their surroundings. After all, the undead don't have brains. They are just a pile of corpses moving with the sole purpose of devouring. Their attack might seem intimidating at first glance, but it was just too straightforward. A fist shot out and knocked down one of the ghouls. Sojin resumed his killing spree after a short break. This time it was another headshot. He didn't need a weapon or any sophisticated technique. The undead reached for his hands only to be sent back to the underworld. Once he got into a rhythm, it was basically over. A rain of exploding heads echoed in rapid succession as the ghouls fell one by one. Using his bare hands, Dojin ripped each of them from their bodies. This time, the members of the Cleomi Guild accepted that they were just spectators and stood watching the spectacle. A few moments later, after looting everything they could from the ghouls, the party continued their journey. As they walked, Joy couldn't contain her curiosity and asked Dojin about his swordsmanship, specifically about the move that produced the radiant flashes. She was obviously talking about the first form of the Vandian sword skill, a miracle born from a single point. He asked without much conviction if she wanted to learn it, and Joy's face immediately lit up. But in a peaceful world like this, he saw no reason to teach something so powerful to someone. Joy realized that this man was seriously underestimating her. She was also an S-rank hero. Theoretically, they were on the same level. Seeing the defiant look in her eyes, Dojin seriously considered teaching her the Vandian swordsmanship. In the end, she accepted that the insurmountable barrier would not budge, pouting like a child who didn't get the toy she wanted. To keep everyone focused, Inju decided they should leave the rift for now. The last leg of the journey back went smoothly, and the group reached the exit rift. Thanks to Dojin's efforts, they cleared the area without any casualties or even injuries. Next time they would re-enter with the goal of closing the rift. Who knows, maybe that attempt will be even quicker. Everyone exited the rift one by one, with Inju leaving last, and immediately she heard a heated argument in Japanese. Someone was camped outside the rift to cause trouble and disturb the peace. The more Inju listened, the more she recognized who that rude voice belonged to. Amidst the confusion, Dojin inexplicably had his hand on Fine Sheet's waist. In front of them was Ryoma Takashi, a former S-rank hero from the Yakuza and master of the Teikoko Guild. He was accompanied by his henchmen. According to Ryoma, he was supposed to have some fun with Jai today, but this little kid dared to stop him. He threatened to smash Dojin's face in if he didn't get out of the way. Ryoma was much taller than him, but Dojin didn't seem the least bit bothered by the threats. He even replied in perfect Japanese. The old Dojin must have learned and studied Japanese before, because Ryoma did not like being insulted in his native tongue at all. Sensing their boss's fury, the Yakuza henchman yelled at Dojin to lower his head and apologize from the bottom of his heart. They kept repeating non-stop that you shouldn't mess with their master, although they could chatter all day. Dojin couldn't care less, and to be blunt, he told Ryoma to get lost. Watching the situation unfold, Inju's concern grew with every second. Teikoko is among the top 5 guilds in Japan. Ryoma Takashi is an infamous bully known for his violent temper. Even for Dojin, maybe it would have been better to stay out of this mess. Trying to mediate peace between the two heated parties, she decided to step in and calm things down. Inju was calm and respectful in her approach, but Ryoma called her a bitch who shouldn't meddle. This time her team got fired up. Their guildmaster was being blatantly disrespected. It could have easily turned into a guild war, but Inju had her men under control. Despite the insulting words, Inju formally introduced herself as the master of the Cleon Guild and proposed they resolve the issue without escalating the situation. Ryoma simply spat on her peaceful proposal. He had never heard of the insignificant Korean guild, so why would he care? Going even further, Ryoma offered to let Inju have a turn with his 2-inch monster after he was done with Dojin, then he tried to grab her by force. But Dojin's body blocked the blow. Annoyed, Ryoma finally showed his fangs after barking for so long. His fist planted a little kiss on Dojin's cheek. He thought that would be enough to knock out the nobody so he could have a little fun in the meantime. The Yakuza idiot also let it slip that he had business to settle with Dojin. One could infer that this whole stunt is just a big calculated provocation. If that's the case, Dojin is willing to play along. He immediately retaliated, hitting Ryoma on the same cheek. His punch was noticeably more effective, sending the cliché Japanese tough guy flying back to his crew. The Yakuza, who had been shouting obscenities, didn't expect to see their boss in this state, Dojin advised. Everyone to back off. Since these idiots attacked first, everything that happens next can be considered self-defense. The Yakuza goons drew their weapons and got into position to fight back, but their boss ordered a one-on-one fight. Ryoma took off the jacket covering his sculpted physique and ordered his men to stand down, awakening the dormant power in his body. The former S-rank Yakuza member showed why he's one of Japan's best. Before the inevitable fight began, Inju turned to Dojin with some advice. She didn't bother trying to calm him down or any of that nonsense. She just asked her man to at least leave the poor Japanese gangster half dead. What happened next was what you might expect. For the guys from Japan, it was a shock, but for the expedition group, it was business as usual. Dojin was beating the crap out of the loudmouth Yakuza Ryoma. His head was being stomped in right in the middle of his crew as the heels of Dojin's shoes crushed him more and more with each step. Miraculously, Ryoma managed to get out of that embarrassing situation by squirming away on his back. He crawled backward toward his companions while trying to reevaluate his life choices. Who the hell did he just pick a fight with? How could he still be human? This was nothing like what he'd heard from his source. Look at those eyes. Seotojin is not a man to be messed with. Staring into them was like a death sentence. Every fiber of Ryoma's being screamed at him to run or he would surely die. It didn't matter if it was shameful to run after declaring war and starting the fight. He just wanted to run and never see Dojin again, unfortunately. He had to finish what he started. The young man shot forward like the wind and appeared in his escape route, looking down at the defeated gangster. Dojin asked if someone had orchestrated this stunt. He already had a good idea of who was behind these dirty tactics. There was no point in denying it. Dojin grabbed Ryoma by his greasy hair and the hardened Yakuza begged for mercy, going from insults to pleading for his life. The gangster's tone changed drastically. Dojin was disgusted by his lack of courage and delivered hundreds of slaps to the guy in a matter of seconds. In the middle of the slapping sequence, he closed his fist to deal some real damage. Dojin began to beat the gangster's ugly face. He reduced that son of a bitch to a bloody pulp. The onlookers were paralyzed with shock and fear. It's not every day you see an S-ranker getting bullied like a character in a high school manga. After many punches, so many it was impossible to count, he let go of Ryoma's limp body. Inju expected her man to win, but this was even more one-sided and brutal than she had imagined. After a brief pause, Dojin went back on the attack, inflicting more trauma on the poor bastard. Carefully placed his heel on the nape of Ryoma's neck. With everyone watching, he slowly increased the force of his step, silently threatening to crack the guy's skull with his foot. At this rate, one of Japan's valuable S-rankers could actually die right there. Inju pushed Juyeon to say something. She snapped out of her trance and begged Dojin to stop before they crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed. In response, he calmly stated that he would take responsibility for his actions. Ju was fed up with his aggression and pulled the boy out of unnecessary trouble. He shouldn't do something he'd have to take responsibility for. Even so, Dojin had seen more than his fair share of people like Ryoma. He found that it was better to just kill these kinds of people than to leave loose ends. But this is the modern world. Inju and Ju and Yan don't want him to get involved with trash like that. To convince Dojin that the Yakuza had learned their lesson, Inju urged the henchmen to surrender and stay away unless they wanted to end up like their boss. These idiots immediately knelt and swore not to mess with Dojin anymore. But Dojin is a hard man to please. He isn't satisfied with a simple bow. He wanted his enemies' heads on the ground, begging for their insignificant lives, knowing that that boy could probably take out 3 of them with a single blow. The henchman did as he asked quite convincingly. Dojin also mentioned that Yakuza members are supposed to cut off their fingers when they make mistakes. Afraid of losing their pinkies, the henchmen slammed their heads on the ground with even more force and intensity, begging for forgiveness. Then Dojin gave them a way out. All they had to do was say, "I'm a piece of trash and I'm sorry," and they would get off with a warning. With tight lips, the gangsters swallowed their pride in the name of survival. They said the magic phrase word for word. The onlookers from the Cleom Guild felt vindicated by how Dojin handled the threat. Even the S-rank member, badly beaten, had to say the humiliating phrase. After settling the matter, they wrapped things up and returned to the Coalition HQ. The next day in sunny São Paulo, Brazil, Juyeon and Inju found themselves in the office of the Brazilian Hero Association to report what had happened the day before. Reading the events that unfolded on paper was a bit hard to believe. The report summarized how an S-rank hero like Ryoma Takashi was beaten to the point of being crippled by just one man. There are several eyewitnesses, but it's still hard to accept. The Brazilian Hero Association expected Korea and Japan to work together to close the problematic Santarém rift if the report is accurate. The Brazilian Association won't need to get involved. They will simply hand the case over to the respective hero associations of Japan and Korea for an internal decision. With that settled, they moved on to the part of the report concerning the group's trip near Santarém. For now, everything seems normal. The representative from the Brazilian Hero Association kept seeing Dojin's name pop up in the report, so he asked if he could speak with him, but that would be impossible right now as Dojin supposedly has some loose ends to tie up inside a lonely hospital room. A poor patient covered in gauze and barely recognizable, his face disfigured, opened his eyes to a nightmarish sight. Dojin had come to pay a proper visit to his victim with flowers in hand. Before Ryoma could make a scene, the executioner ordered him to be quiet and claimed to be there on an official hospital visit. He then reached into the bouquet of flowers and pulled out the eye of the link that was hidden inside. Dojin forced Ryoma into an intense and unfair staring contest with the gangster completely under the bewitching power of the Zalos. It was time to extract information about the man behind the provocation. Dojin remained in that hospital room interrogating his victim for quite some time. When he was finished, the infamous Ryoma Takashi had been reduced to a bumbling idiot with a fried brain. He couldn't stop calling himself an insignificant piece of trash who caused trouble for the Korean guilds. His mind was completely shattered and the loose ends were eliminated. When Dojin left the room, Ryoma had been completely lobotomized. He wouldn't stop repeating that the Yakuza was shit, knowing how to deal with lingering enemies while cultivating his aura. It's the mark of a truly exceptional protagonist. The rumors about the clash between the Korean and Japanese heroes leaked quickly and spread through all major media outlets. Some articles detailed the assault while others showed the aftermath. And most publications tried to get a statement from the rising star. The president of the Korean Hero Association, N.A. Wong, was in tune with the popular sentiment. He knew his new protege was dominating the news. The reaction was explosive. Reports about Dojin flooded the airwaves. The association also received news that the Japanese Hero Association had closed the investigation. Ryoma Takashi himself asked his government to stop it, and that was strange, considering he was known for being impulsive and always ready to pick a fight. For an entire country to back down, something else must have happened. As for what that something was, N.A. Wong had no idea. The old man simply couldn't shake the feeling that with Dojin in the spotlight, the world's balance had already begun to shift. Now there was only one day left until the start of the operation to close the Brazilian border zone. The Korean team, which arrived first, had just finished adapting and familiarizing themselves with the area. Everyone exchanged and shared joint operation plans, rigorously refining the strategy. The rest of the heroes recruited from around the world also gathered. To encourage success and cooperation, the Brazilian government organized a sort of pre-battle festival. The star of the event was, of course, the enigmatic media darling Dojin. He bought an overcoat to maximize his aura. In the banquet hall filled with delicacies, Dojin interacted very well with the other heroes from other countries. The news that he had defeated Ryoma Takashi spread across the world. It was natural that everyone wanted to know the sordid details. Everyone who approached Dojin only wanted to talk about the incident. Even so, he didn't show any arrogance at all. Inju casually commented that compared to the star of the moment, she and Jayu were like ordinary people. This was the kind of comment that would have provoked a response from the S-rank heroine, but she remained silent, apparently lost in thought. As she wondered what had put her in such a bad mood, Inju looked around and saw Dojin looking all sloppy, interacting with some big names from the hero world. Upon seeing the stunning woman clinging to him, Jayu's mood finally made sense. That woman was Gloria Tyler, an American S-rank heroine. Voted the most beautiful heroine in the world, Inju put the pieces together and gave her friend a hard slap on the back. She yelled at Jayu to stop pouting, get her butt off the chair, and go talk to her man. Jayu didn't really know how to interact with Dojin outside of the rift, but she approached him anyway. It's true that she seemed completely lost looking at the floor instead of at her fellow heroes. Dojin noticed the slight blush on her cheeks and couldn't hold back an amused smile. Gloria Tyler took the hint and said her goodbyes to him. Interestingly, she referred to Dojin as Carcel, his real name from his previous life. It seems he introduced himself that way to Gloria. Even Jiyu had no idea who this Carcel person was. She assumed Carcel must be his Western name or something like that. In a way, she wasn't wrong. It was just a name he used before he was Dojin. With the little information she had, she wondered if he had lived abroad as a child. But that was impossible. She had already done an extensive background check on him. Jiyu was visibly upset that another woman had found out that Dojin had a different name before she did. As they were chatting casually in the middle of the banquet, some random idiot was lurking nearby, discreetly holding a glass in his hand. Kang Young-P was listening in on the conversation. In his thoughts, he was cursing his Japanese friend for failing to handle one guy. Not at this rate, he wouldn't even want to get involved as he seethed inside with the desire to tear Dojin to pieces. His huge ears caught Ju whispering a warning. She reminded her man that even if he's strong, enemies don't always play fair. Roma Takashi had some close friends in his circle. The guy they had to worry about was in that hall. Dojin cut her off before she could reveal the name of the obvious mastermind. He went on saying he didn't need to know who was coming. It'll be the same crap, just a different guy. Just like Takashi, the mastermind is nothing more than a dirty, arrogant clown with no skills whatsoever. Men like that aren't even worth worrying about. Dojin vehemently reinforced this idea. As he slowly turned his gaze to the target lingering behind him, Kang Yang-B quickly turned away and pretended he hadn't heard anything, but he had. This guy is about to pass out in the middle of the party. The icing on the cake of this masterful display of provocation was Dojin's mocking smile, openly taunting Young Piu. The strategy worked. Young Piu doesn't want to send another henchman. He wants to settle this score with Dojin himself. After the festival that preceded the battle, the heroes rested and were sent to the battlefield the following night. Angel, her guild, Ju, and Dojin gathered outside the rift designated for their team and were forced to pause for a moment. The rift zone near Sanaren looked murkier, darker, and much more sinister than usual. Still, some of the guys found this ominous change insignificant, considering they had 2 competent S-rank heroes among them. They could just go in and close that thing. What could go wrong? With some apprehension, Angel gave the order for her men to advance. Dojin had a grim look as he stared at the overgrown rift. He had a bad feeling about something. The ladies had no idea what he was implying, but his threatening words made them uneasy. It was something faint and hard to perceive, but the mana density in the area was increasing at an abnormal rate. Inside the rift floating in the air, some long-nailed entity was watching a phone that displayed a progress bar at around 23%. The wielder estimated that 30% was just around the corner, according to its calculations. That level of power should be enough to kill the worthless trash who call themselves heroes and crawl into the rift. As soon as they entered, everyone felt their bodies pinned down by something heavy in the air. Moving was extremely difficult. The air density made it hard to breathe. All these problems pointed to a drastic change in the quality of the mana around them. Right now, it was even denser than the potty forest. Juan had never seen that man so tense. She couldn't help but worry about today's mission. Even so, they were determined to finish the job. Being the competent leader she was, Angel kept her men in line and calmed their nerves. She explained that the shared weight they were feeling was just a characteristic of the rift zone. With it being harder to move, they couldn't afford to let their guard down. Knowing that the 2 rankers were their best guarantee, Angel respectfully asked them to focus on protecting the formation as much as possible, until they figured out why the mana density had changed. That's the safest play, so they both agreed. Whatever happens, the goal is to close the rift, whatever the cost. The Cleon guys looked ready to follow their leader to hell and back at almost the same time that Dojin was entering the anomalous rift of Santorin. Another group gathered at the rift zone near Manaus, the largest city in northern Brazil. A joint team of French, Korean, and Brazilian heroes was dispatched. They are failing miserably. These guys are getting their asses kicked. Leveling up alone was already too much for ants like us. And now we've got killer bees. The overconfident foreign heroes thought they would breeze through this mission. After all, these bees were supposed to be easy targets for C-rank heroes, but there they were getting slaughtered by gigantic insects. Even the A-rank heroes among them were dropping like flies. The killer bees had no regard for human life. They have killer in their name. What did you expect? The only remaining hero tried his luck against one of the flying creatures and his fist landed a direct hit. It was useless. His body had become so heavy that he couldn't project the desired force. Normally, he would be able to shred an entire colony of these bees by himself right there. They weren't a cleanup squad. They were just prey acting as defenses for the true hunters. It's hard to say how many of these so-called heroes would actually make it out alive. Back in Santorin, Inju barely escaped a heavy axe blow in his first encounter. Positioned before the squad was a battalion of black orcs. And they were no ordinary black orcs, just like the killer bees. They were abnormally stronger than their rank indicated. Even so, the boys from Cleom kept up the pressure and executed their combos. Unfortunately, landing an attack that deals no damage isn't a recipe for victory. Even with perfect teamwork, they couldn't break through the titanic defense of the Black Orcs. Caught off guard, the Cleom boys were almost wiped out by an axe swing. Juan had to step in to drag them back to a safe distance from the beasts. She also yelled at them for rushing in so recklessly. As soon as the newbies were taken to safety, Ju jumped back into the fight. The Black Orc tried to knock her out of the air, but the S-ranker dodged the fierce attacks with grace and mastery. After demonstrating some elegant footwork, she turned the tables and went on the attack with a spinning kick. With superhuman reaction time, the monster quickly turned around. To protect its vulnerable bald head, John's convincing feint worked. She dodged the turn and her spiraling kick went even higher. From the heavens she descended with the force of a meteor, taking down one of the Black Orcs. The remaining beasts were determined to avenge their fallen comrade. Using a cunning maneuver, Juan tricked the enraged orc into damaging an ally with its heavy bone club, realizing what it had done. To its comrade, the orc stopped in its tracks, startled. This gave John the opening to strike from behind with her lightning-fast agility. This time, she didn't need any elaborate movement patterns, all it took was a direct kick to the nape of its neck. The Cleome boys watched Juan intently. In action. Because of the destructive enigma known as Dojin, they had almost forgotten that Ron Juan was also an S-rank far superior to mere mortals. Like them, only one last Black Orc remained. It tried to act tough with a shrill war cry. Fortunately, a fist flew into. Shatter its jaw, silencing it completely. Juan had her moment to shine. Dojin was just cleaning up the remaining trash. Inju felt helpless. They had barely left the rift's entrance and the difficulty level was already this high, even with 2 S-rankers carrying them clearing this place. Would be no walk in the park. After taking out the orcs, Dojin examined the corpses more closely to investigate, and Ju, curious, did the same. He pointed to the black ripple enveloping the beast. It's hard to see with the untrained eye, but it's there if you focus hard enough. Dojin was now certain that this black ripple was enhancing the monsters to an absurd level. Its presence, effects, and feel were consistent with dark mana, something that shouldn't exist in this world. It seems he's feeling talkative today as he explains what the dark ripple means for this mission. But deeper inside the Sandarim Rift, they reached a different biome and encountered a different class of monsters. They looked like mounds of sludge, a pack of ferocious swamp creatures. Against these slimy bastards, the Cleon boys jumped back into the fray to prove their worth. They were fast and precise with their practiced rotations, but the damage just wasn't there. Maybe another duo could break through their defense. However, their cooperation could only get them so far. They managed to incapacitate one of the swamp monsters, but it wasn't enough to finish it off. They were used to dealing with regular swamp monsters, but this was a different species entirely. Completely exposed, the boys were caught in the petrifying sludge. The spearman managed to recover, but his partner, the shield wielder, took the brunt of the impact. The attack was strong enough to rip a high-class combat armor. Each attack was lethal. Despair, helplessness, and confusion tormented their minds as continued to resist. A lapse in judgment could put their lives in danger if they weren't paying close attention to their surroundings. Fortunately, the guildmaster, Inju, was vigilant for any stealthy movement from the ghouls. With her boys in danger, her combat instincts were on high alert. Jonginju wielded her sword as if it were an extension of her body, showing how she reached the top on her own strength. Even so, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. If the swamp ghouls are this strong, then the Valkyrie will be even worse. For a moment, she had a terrifying thought. What if all the rift zones in the world underwent this kind of change? Meanwhile, let's see what's happening in the other rift zone. Near Manaus, inside, the newbies weren't as lucky to have reliable porters. The sole survivor of one of the groups is running frantically through the forest with his life hanging by a thread. Arvado from Brazil, David from France, and many others have fallen. Those 2 guys were supposed to be invincible. They were S-rank, and yet they were taken out by just a few Valkyrie's fierce spider monsters despite having easily defeated the swamp ghouls. Juan and Dojin started talking about the cruel insect that awaited them at the end of the rift. Dojin clearly remembered that a Valkyrie imbued with black mana was especially dangerous. If those spiders were infected by the same dark aura, they were going to be a real handful. While they were discussing the final boss, Juan continued to punch the slimy monsters into complete annihilation. Likewise, Dojin was giving everyone a crash course on mana, highly concentrated, flowing directly into a monster's body. Jun asked if he was talking about the blue bar that players use to cast magic in video games. It seemed he wasn't getting anywhere with the lecture. In this world, no one even knows that the biggest difference between heroes and ordinary people is the ability to store and use mana. Interrupting his complex lecture, Dojin pierced through the body of a swamp ghoul with a punch. He pondered the implications of a world that doesn't even have the concept of mana. Now it made sense why the world was so peaceful in comparison to his previous world. At this rate, that peace might be about to shatter, but for now, he would simply carve a path out of this swampy encampment with his own hands. Dojin easily defeated the largest swamp ghouls in the blink of an eye. The Cleome boys looked like they had just gotten out of a war. Their S-level babysitters, on the other hand, were pristine. Now that they were safe, Dojin came up with an explanation that was easier to understand about the properties of black mana. Simplifying it, the monsters in this rift are like athletes doped up on steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. He found humanity's severe lack of knowledge about this simple concept strange and worrying. Leaving the swamp ghouls' territory behind, Dojin took over navigation and guided the team away from the area where the Valkyrie appears. They also reduced their pace of advance to a slow march. A few minutes later, Ainju gave the signal to halt and the entire team stopped. They had found what they were looking for, the place where... Yo, you've watched the video this far and still haven't subscribed to the channel? What's up with that, bro? You're slacking, huh? Come on, man. Hit that subscribe button. It'll make me super happy, you know? Ha 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 ha. Where a Valkyrie was hiding its feeding cocoons. Wrapped in the toughest silk killer bees and black orcs were captured and stored for later use. It's safe to assume that the monster responsible for this horrific scene is nearby. But according to the leader, they can actually relax a bit. Instead of looking for the beast itself, they stumbled upon the real danger, and it's a good thing they did. His hand shot out flaming blasts, the targets were motionless. So you already know his aim is flawless. Each bubble of energy exploded, burning the cocoons and the dead monsters inside them. Valkyries that have absorbed black mana have the ability to control their dead prey like puppets. Destroying them now would be advantageous in the final battle. Leaving them alone would be a recipe for disaster. With its secret weapon destroyed, all that's left now is to defeat the horrendous spider. The team stared at him like he was crazy, which, considering what they saw, is an understandable reaction. Inju and the others were impressed that even in a situation so seemingly desperate, he acted as if he knew exactly what to do. Everyone was blinded by his strength, but at this point his skill set seemed superhuman. Juyeon, in a playful tone, joked about his encyclopedic knowledge and his almost mechanical decision-making process. She asked with a mischievous smile if this was his second life or something. Hearing the question, Dojin let out a genuine laugh. For a brief moment, he fondly remembered who he used to be. Living as Dojin could indeed be considered a second life. Changing the subject, he asked Inju how far they were from the core. With the map and their position fixed in her mind, she estimated they were about halfway there after crossing the next jungle. At their current pace, it would be a rather long journey, but Dojin claimed they could close the rift before the end of the day. This crazy idea might be possible for Dojin, but for the Cleom kids, a boss marathon in a single day would be too much. Most of them had already spent all their energy fighting the swamp golems. If they couldn't continue, they could just rest. Dojin didn't have the luxury of wasting time. He would simply deal with the giant spider alone and come back when he was done. Without another word, he took off, carried by the wind, leaving everyone behind without any room for discussion. They had all been through hell, but that man still had the energy to tear through the forest like an unstoppable freight train as the jungle landscape blurred. His eyes constantly scanned the environment, searching for details that could lead him to the final battle. With his tracking skills and a vague idea of the Valkyrie's nest, he finally spotted his target. The Valkyrie is a terrible scaly and spiky beast. Its abdomen is covered in tough armor and protruding blades. It also bit a guy named Peter Parker once, but none of that matters. Dojin leaped into the air and began his strike with his sword still sheathed. He initiated the exotic spectacle by slicing through the spider's legs, which had scales thicker than steel. Judging by the insect's horrific screech, losing 3 legs at once must feel very painful. Enraged, the Valkyrie opened its mandibles and shot a sticky web like a fanboy who just got internet access. It was a shot that missed badly as Dojin skillfully dodged the web's trajectory. He moved all over the place with superhuman speed. There was no reason to prolong the fight when the gap in power was so vast. With a series of cross slashes, the exotic spectacle came to an end. Dojin sliced the Valkyrie into several pieces, and this guy still had time to adjust his position to land perfectly and gather his aura. The monster that massacred several S-rank players in the other rift zone was crushed in a matter of seconds. He stood up, exhaled deeply, and examined his body for any changes. Surprisingly, his stamina was still at its peak with no signs of fatigue. This might have something to do with the dark mana he absorbed through his mana cultivation technique. After defeating the strongest monster in the rift, Dojin returned to camp as if he had just taken a leak in the woods or something. Ju and Inju didn't need to ask if he had done what he set out to do, they just knew. The guy didn't even look tired. His sweatshirt was spattered with blood, but not a single drop was his, since he couldn't sense any other dangerous monsters nearby. That jungle should be the perfect place to camp and rest. After the campfire was lit, everyone sat down to relax. The injured were treated, and those who were relatively unharmed chatted among themselves, and there was Dojin silently roasting his meat on a skewer, one of the Cleom boys. The spearman peeked at what he was doing, got curious, and approached the inaccessible leader. In a friendly tone, he asked Dojin if he could also try the meat. You know, he has plenty of meat, so giving some to the others was no problem at all. Seeing his comrades sitting and dining with Dojin, another Cleom boy showed up. The spear guy wanted to try some of Dojin's meat, thinking it was the secret to his strength since they didn't have... With nothing to lose, the boys gathered around the campfire to get some of Dojin's meat. Everyone watched them with great interest as they put the meat in their mouths. Dojin was genuinely pleased to see the boys sharing his meat. It's not good for much other than filling their stomachs, but he doesn't dislike those who just want to get stronger. As a small gift, he cunningly manipulated his mana to infuse the boys with a small boost on a whim. The effect of the infusion was immediately apparent. Of course, the boys attributed the warm energy flowing through their bodies to the meat. Seeing them beaming with smiles also made Dojin briefly break his stoic expression. After dinner came more route planning. With the map laid out, Inju pointed the straight path toward the rift's core. It had been a long day and everyone was exhausted. It would be safer to go back and continue tomorrow. Although Dojin claimed the rift needed to be closed today, their backpacks were already full of valuable items and it would be more prudent to leave and return later. Ju also agreed with Inju's assessment. The previous fights had taken a heavy toll on their stamina and the monsters infused with dark mana were too troublesome to face. While the original plan was to delay closing the rift as much as possible, that way, they could collect as many rare materials as possible, including the heart of the blue crocodile. They were supposed to turn the rift into a source of infinite resources, but the sudden involvement of dark mana changed that original plan. Drastic changes like this are never a good sign inside a rift. Besides, he felt something strange in the dark mana hanging in the air, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. Dojin grabbed his backpack and dumped its contents onto the ground. The backpack was filled with the glowing red eyes of the Valkyrie. He asked the ladies to take all these legendary items back to the hotel first, since they were set on retreating. They might as well keep his share of the loot. Before heading back into the deep dark forest, he promised to close the rift and rejoin the group soon. On his way to the rift's core, Dojin encountered many troublesome obstacles. First, the newly resurrected swamp golems moving through the muddy waters. He must have already killed dozens of them. He simply tore through these slimy creatures as he moved continuously. Using his bare hands became a bit too tedious. His eyes sharpened and the blade was unsheathed. Swamp monster goo stained his sword as the golems disintegrated around him. You see, the key to killing them quickly and easily was to aim for the core every time. In the opposite direction he was heading, the Klee Guild and Ryan Juan headed towards the exit. As soon as the sun rose, walking beside her dear friend Inju expressed her concern for Dojin. Ju assured her that he would be fine. If he still has the energy to run off like that, then he still has energy to defend himself. She says that, but Inju could see the sadness practically written on her face. Ju's head was bowed. In shame, not in worry for Dojin, she feels like an imposter for calling herself an S-ranker next to that man. She can't imagine anyone in the world on his level. Moving gracefully through the air, Dojin's blade fell upon a black orc's head. He gave the poor orc the most painful free haircut in the world. Half its brain and skull were lopped off in a single clean strike. Keeping the momentum, he switched targets and struck the bald head of another black orc. His emotionless slaughter rightfully enraged the remaining orcs. Seeing them throw a tantrum made him give a wry smirk. A swing of a reckless axe came his way and he seemingly vanished into thin air. When he reappeared, he had a bunch of destructive fireballs ready in his hand. He launched a volley of spells at the orcs, burning their bodies to an agonizing death. When he finished sweeping through the black orc's lair, he had already decimated the population. With every kill he claimed, his bag of treasures grew heavier. At that moment, Juan, Inju, and the boys finally exited through the rift they entered. With their backpacks full of valuable materials, they headed back to cash in. Meanwhile, as they headed for the safety of the city, Dojin was farming alone in the rift. In broad daylight, he took down a blue crocodile without batting an eye, stained with the blood of its victims. Dojin continued to raise his kill count. While the corpse was still relatively fresh, he tore the heart from the reptile's chest. After the successful harvest, he tossed the large heart into a vial. He sealed it airtight to keep the material in its optimal state. Making even more cuts into the body of his latest victim, he got 2 more crystals for his backpack. Camping in the blue crocodile's den was surprisingly profitable with such a high drop rate. As soon as they stopped spawning, Dojin packed his things to move to another area. Outside the rift and inside the Situation Room of Brazil's Hero Association HQ, the government's tech geeks were working non-stop to monitor the joint expeditions. For the first time since the operation began, the HQ received a notification, a positive one. According to the map readings, the rift zone in Santarem had vanished for an instant. The tech specialists couldn't believe what they were seeing on their screens. When reality set in, shouts of victory echoed through the operations room. They quickly investigated what had happened in the sector and found that only one Korean team was positioned at that location. The group was registered under the name of the Cleom Guild, but how that group managed to clear a rift when they had contacted HQ to report their tactical retreat just 10 minutes earlier simply made no sense. The HQ staff was baffled. You see, 10 minutes earlier, our hero was in the middle of an intense fight against a horrifying opponent, the voracious two-headed ogre. Observing the mutant beast, Dojin realized that this monster had undergone a rapid evolution due to enrichment with black mana. The beast stomped its foot on the ground and the resulting tremor almost threw him off balance. Behind this final obstacle, the Rift Core floated over the vast expanse of land. Eager to end the long night, quickly Dojin changed his usual stance. After the stomp, the ogre decided to abuse its reach advantage. The tip of Dojin's blade began to heat up rapidly. At the same time, the ogre's colossal fist balled up into a powerful punch. No matter how small an opening the opponent makes, Dojin will find a way to break through it with his hot and ready sword. He unleashed the second form of the Vandian sword skill with a fire capable of eradicating everything in its path. Grammy Gramora Poera. A linear sweep magic shone brightly. The two-headed ogre couldn't have been prepared for what was coming. With a perfectly straight cut, aligned with the monster's shoulder, it was delivered before it could react. It left a deep, long gash on the ogre's body, causing it to roar in agony. In combat, Dojin could finally let loose and grin like a madman. And he was just getting started, not giving the monster a moment's rest. He charged forward with the flaming blade in hand. It was too fast to be defended against. He was practically dicing up the two-headed creature. In desperation, the ogre raised its fist and tried to throw a punch with the full force of its compact muscles. Dojin masterfully dodged by using verticality, while preparing another attack. This time, instead of a single strike, multiple intersecting lines hit the beast head-on. Not even the nearby trees escaped his sharp combination. Uncaring of what happened around him, and with no rookie heroes around, Dojin could finally stretch his muscles. At that moment, the ogre knew it was toast. It has 2 heads and 2 brains, which makes the fear even greater. Instinctively, it tried to avoid the fatal attack by jumping to the side. At first, it seemed like the beast would get enough space to escape the carnage. In the end, one of its legs was still hit by the sweeping magic. The blow sliced through skin, flesh, and bone. A clean cut. Both heads wailed loudly in agony as the beast was thrown off balance, one leg short. Dojin's next attack was a guaranteed critical hit. The second form of the Vandian sword is a brutal stance capable of slicing even the most powerful enemies to bits. When the two-headed ogre landed, it was like a rain of flesh. Dojin took a deep breath and sheathed his sword. He then turned his attention to the dungeon's rift core, staring intently into the eye of the abyss. He carefully observed the core's properties. He noticed that the density of the black mana near it remained constant without any change. This means that the core has nothing to do with the anomaly. It's very likely that the black mana is being pumped in by an external factor. Someone is doing this on purpose. Flooding a rift zone with black mana at such high levels would require considerable power. Dojin estimates that someone at the level of an undead lord or an imperial lich is behind this malevolent manipulation. But if a being of that level is truly responsible for the anomaly, most of life on Earth should already be enslaved as undead soldiers. It's difficult to identify an immediate suspect at this point. In any case, closing the rift won't be the end of this anomaly if there's an external factor behind it. Dojin clenched his fist and punched the rift's core with all his might. A single blow was enough to crack that swirling mass of energy. The crack spread quickly and the whole thing shattered into small fragments. Dojin took it upon himself to investigate and track down whoever is messing with these rifts. Back at the hero's headquarters in Brazil, reports on the multiple expeditions reached the association's president. Reading the full account of what was happening around the rifts made him shudder. Every line of text documenting the expeditions was unbelievable. On one hand, they sent a joint team of experienced heroes from 3 nations, but only one S-rank hero returned alive. On the other hand, a single Korean team managed to close their rift without any casualties. The HQ is still receiving breaking updates from other rift zones. Practically all attempts have failed and the traumatized heroes are desperately retreating. Even though they selected teams with at least one S-rank hero, the first round was a resounding failure. The only bright spot was the successful closure of the rift by Ryan Jun's Korean team. But according to the reports, it's difficult to attribute the success to the Korean team. The president consulted the file and examined Santorin's report more closely. It stated that the rift closed after they had already left the portal. It simply didn't make sense. It's hard to understand how the rift was closed. They need to hear what really happened from Ryan Jun herself. Fortunately, she's already on her way to the HQ and will arrive at any moment. From the moment Jun and the team from Inju left the rift until they reached the HQ, just over 1 hour had passed. In that short amount of time, Dojin closed the first rift zone without the slightest effort. Now he has entered the second nearby rift zone and quickly determined that the core was submerged. Like the giant he is, Dojin dove into the monster-infested waters. On the other side of the country, the president of the Brazilian Hero Association had just been briefed on what exactly had happened in the Santorin Rift. He found it unbelievable. Even though the reports came directly from Jun's mouth, it was still hard to believe that a single player could have cleared a rift plagued by this so-called black mana. Jun wasn't present for the last part of Dojin's solo mission, but she was 100% certain that he solved the problem by himself. The president was forced to accept this fact. He shared some confidential information with Jun about the catastrophic failure of the other teams. Several S-rank heroes died in other rift zones. Without beating around the bush, June admitted she would have been part of that statistic if it weren't for Dojin. Based on the current information, it's hard to believe her account. But she also relayed valuable information about the black mana that empowered the monsters, giving them power that surpasses even that of S-rank heroes. June remained calm. She shared what needed to be shared. It's up to the association whether to accept it or not. To make the situation even harder to believe, they had just received reports that several rifts south of Sanner have been closed. The president assumed that these rifts must have been spared from the influence of the black mana. June warned him not to think that way. She stated that the danger level of each rift is completely different from the last. The first sign was an entrance color that was different from the usual. For now, that's the only way to check if a rift is a trap, mortal or not. The president immediately notified his team to check all the rift entrances in Brazil. While he was coordinating with his team, Joao stood up and left. Her work there was done. Upon leaving the office, she quickly dialed Chairman Nate Wong of the Korean Hero Association. The old man listened patiently to Joao's detailed report on the expedition and the dangers of the dark mana. Fortunately, there were no signs yet of this dangerous variable in Korea. Nate Wong would pay closer attention to the rifts. If Hanka's heroes could be decimated like helpless animals when facing empowered monsters, that was a real cause for concern. If a boss-class monster came into contact with such a malevolent force, the results would be far more terrifying. They might be safe for now, but Korea needed to prepare for the worst as much as possible. While everyone was panicking, Dojin calmly dove into the serene waters of the rift, a world of rivers, lakes, and islands. Rifts like these usually have their core submerged. Naturally, humans can't breathe underwater. Very few heroes can fight at their full strength under such unfavorable conditions. As far as Dojin knew, New Zealand's national hero Ivan Looper was the only decent S-rank hero who specialized in underwater combat. Due to his specialty, he charged a high price to clear underwater rifts around the world. Thanks to his unique ability to breathe underwater, he could monopolize the market for troublesome aquatic rifts. As Dojin neared the depths, he immediately felt the presence of dark mana intensifying. Taking a deep breath, he dove into the unknown, swimming skillfully through the water. The creatures near the surface didn't pose much of a threat. Upon reaching a certain depth, all light seemed to disappear, possibly due to the presence of dark mana. He also noticed more ferocious-looking monsters circling around, curious. As he moved further and further from the shore, he needed to stabilize himself underwater. He used his mana to form a membrane around his entire body, blocking the pressure and allowing him to move freely. The deeper he dove, the more he needed to adjust the resistance of the mana membrane. When he reached the deepest part of the rift, Dojin had perfectly calibrated his protective membrane, allowing him to move unhindered. He was immediately targeted by one of the grotesque monsters lurking in the darkness. It looked like an overgrown predatory seahorse. He was already familiar with this treacherous beast in Archon. As expected, it seemed to be brimming with supernatural power thanks to the dark mana. Dojin clenched his fist and strengthened his protection, spreading it over a wider area. In doing so, he illuminated the dark depths. The sudden burst of energy was enough to catch the Archon by surprise, slaughtering the beast without using his weapon. The Archon's blood guts and body parts turned the water a filthy crimson hue. The smell of carnage also attracted a school of bloodthirsty piranhas. These opportunistic carnivores eagerly devoured the Archon's gutted carcass. While the first wave was busy with the Archon's pieces, the next one locked onto Dojin. Dojin figured that if Ivan Looper witnessed what he was seeing now, he would probably wet his pants. As soon as the second wave of piranhas entered his kill zone, Dojin eliminated them with ruthless efficiency and, unfazed by the instability of the water, he maintained perfect control of his body. He hunted more Archons, even punching a shark in the abdomen. With his feet firmly planted on the bottom, he unleashed a series of punches with the same speed as when he was on dry land. He was killing fish non-stop. As his kill count rose, more hungry beasts gathered around his position. Dealing with these small fry was, without a doubt, a pain. For now, Dojin decided to change his position, chose a direction, and shot away. While fleeing from his aquatic enemies, he was overcome by a sense of unease. He realized he had reached an area where no other creatures dared to venture. Before him, resting on a stone bed, was a peculiar one-eyed fish. Dojin immediately recognized that son of a gun. That sinister-looking fish was an acromos. Dojin didn't expect to find a familiar beast there today. This excited him enough to crack a smile. In the previous world, everyone whose names became legends had one thing in common. They all hunted the infamous acromos when they were nobodies. For him in the present, this was a golden opportunity he couldn't let slip away. Coincidentally, the core of the cursed rift zone was perfectly hidden beneath the spot where the acromos rested. The flatfish with one golden and one purple eye positioned itself for combat. Dojin did the same, planting his feet firmly on the waterbed. These creatures have no natural enemies in the wild. Whatever they face, they simply create a subspace and swallow any threat whole. A real menace. As expected, as soon as he got close enough, the subspace expanded in an attempt to suck everything in. Dojin struggled to avoid the worst-case scenario, getting hit before he even started. After narrowly escaping the initial expansion, he scoffed and moved meticulously through the narrow gaps of the subspace. His movements were fluid, avoiding the infinite void on the other side of the creeping subspace. The Acromos kept its gaze fixed on the troublesome human while Dojin transformed into a Super Saiyan. In his current position, clubbing the fish to death would be quick and easy, but if he went down that barbaric path, he wouldn't be able to obtain its subspace. The only way to hunt this thing properly is through the use of pure mana suppression. This way he could kill the Acromos and keep the subspace intact for the taking. Using mana quality and brute force, Dojin pushed his output to the limit and overpowered the expanding subspace. The light and destructive power of his pure mana reaped the lives of other monsters lurking nearby. The poor fish didn't even know what hit them. Dojin didn't care about the minor collateral damage. He was more concerned with the Acromos' resistance. The more it tried to resist and close the distance, the more concentrated and viscous the subspace became. He was already releasing an impressive amount of pure mana, and his tank was rapidly running dry. He had no choice left but to try and absorb the dark mana from the depths. In doing so, he opened his body to receive the malevolent energy, purifying it and emitting it in rapid succession. Dojin was clearly pushing himself beyond his body's limits. He felt a trickle of blood run from his nose. Oops. He realized he might have overestimated his body's capacity. Meanwhile, the Acromos stared him down with that enigmatic eye, refusing to let the golden opportunity before it slip away. Dojin decided to throw caution to the wind and gave it his all. A few moments later, the serene flow of the rift's water was interrupted by a violent plunge. Just like that, Dojin managed to pull the Acromos out of its territory with sheer willpower. Now on dry land, the tables had turned, and Dojin quickly seized the subspace. In his hand, an infinite void that could be used for a wide variety of purposes. As soon as the subspace was ripped from the fish, it lost the light in its eyes and succumbed to death. Its lifeless corpse fell back into the water while Dojin unconsciously collapsed on dry land. A few hours later, before sunset, curious birds gathered around the fainted Dojin. He woke up with a sneeze, his body expelling the water that had entered his system. The birds were naturally startled and flew away. Dojin opened his eyes, still exhausted from the intense underwater fight. Fortunately, his wet backpack and sword hadn't been lost. It would have been a huge hassle to go back into that dark water to look for them. Remembering what he had just accomplished, he sat up and tested his new power. First, he conjured pure mana around his arm and felt the quantitative change it had undergone. It was evident that his mana capacity had increased considerably compared to before. Fighting that annoying fish and risking it all would have been worth it for this alone. But the main prize at the end of that suffocating fight was his newly stolen subspace. This is the biggest gain he's gotten on this trip to Brazil so far. Now he no longer needs to carry his backpack and sword. He can simply store them in the void hassle-free. From the burden of carrying his loot and the weapon, Dojin happily stood up and stretched its limbs. He had already gotten a huge haul in this rift. It was time to call it a day. With the boss defeated, he could just quickly close the rift and go back to the inn. It's a beautiful and productive day to be a subspace thief.